So,
No, all right, let's skip the first item.
no, I skipped the first. This is the
That's why we
Environmental
can.
Review Board meeting, January 22nd. And our first item on the agenda is to spend a couple minutes farewell to Bill Flank, our chairman, since he's been on the board since 1991, and I think he became chairman in 1997, I think it was.
It was 99.
Was it 99?
Who's counting?
You know, so, I've been with the town since '94, and it's been a pleasure working with Bill all these years, and his leadership and his attention to detail, and, you know, I've enjoyed lots and lots of discussions over the years with, you know, different projects and different angles to look at things, but I've always found Bill to be very fair, very compassionate, very passionate about the environment, and he walks the walk. You know, his years with Boy Scouts and, you know, getting to experience nature, I mean, he's been a real pleasure to have, so I wanna thank you.
Well, I want you to know that I originated the motto for the Environmental Review Board. Have boots, will travel.
Very good.
But that's a lot of water under the dam.
And when I mentioned it to the town administrator and town board, they would, you know, they're planning on recognizing Bill tomorrow at 7 o'clock at the town board meeting as well, for his years of service. So if you
That
can
means
make
you
it, that would be great.
That means you gotta show up at town hall 2 nights in a row though.
2 nights in a row, yeah, well.
I don't even know if they'll have cookies.
And then also John is up for reappointment in the town board because it's, you know, the start of the year again. I think they have it on their agenda for the next work session, but there's several boards that have individuals that need to be reappointed, and my understanding is that will take place. We just haven't heard an official date yet.
They're on the
And,
fence. They're on the
You're
fence.
on the fence.
The other item under administrative matters is the need for recruitment has become even more paramount now.
Yes.
You know, the board, the way the board is constituted is we need 3 members to have a quorum. You know, so we're down to 3 members, so you guys are, you know, having to, you know,
Stay healthy.
Stay healthy.
Stay healthy,
Yeah.
alright.
Well,
On that, and, you know, so we're certainly
And
encouraged
available.
the town board to, you know, continue advertising, but if you know anybody that has an, you know, a good science background or architecture or engineering, you know, this kind of skill set that helps, you know, quite a bit with
well,
the work we do.
I gave you one recommendation.
Mhm.
I think I mentioned I had spoken, well, can't tell you who, not allowed to do that. But I had spoken with them sometime back, and another position took priority. But that's coming to a close, and in sometime this spring, I think they would be available, and I've been discussing this with some other members of the family to try to twist a couple of arms, because I think this would be
Civil persuasion.
a good person.
And I almost forgot, Dana and my wife made chocolate chip cookies for you this afternoon.
Oh.
She
Thank you, thank
She
you.
knows
Thank
your
her.
legendary sweet tooth, so. Open it. Sealed up pretty well.
That means we don't have to kick in a contribution to them tonight?
No, you don't have to.
Boy, getting away with murder tonight. Oh, I should mention that there is water in this place that we're moving to. So,
What kind
there
of
will be.
water?
Standing water?
Standing water in your basement?
A lake and drainage and all that. So there are opportunities to carry on.
Protected, yeah.
Yeah.
Continue the good look.
Uh-huh. Do they know? I mean, I assume you had to pass some board or something? They know what they're getting?
Yeah, I think they do. And they said okay anyway.
Really?
Yeah.
They didn't come to us for references.
So lucky, fortunate.
Oh, I didn't tell them that, did
So on the agenda, we've got a couple of pending applications, 50 North Place, which was the former Cogger property. Jerry Barrett, their landscape architect, is back representing the bank that currently owns the property. But they had come in a few months ago with a concept plan of how to, take the irrigation pump offline, and so they've, apparently finalized the plans, so he wanted to run that by us and give us an update on that. And then New York City DEP on Hidden Hollow, that's one of their aqueduct drainage improvements that we also approved back in 2013.
Right.
And they've,
We went and did a site visit on that.
Yeah, we did that,
Yeah.
yeah.
The culvert?
Yeah, the big,
Yeah.
the big culvert
yeah.
up above Hidden Hollow.
And,
Yeah.
they've, because of their funding cycles, they're finally got it scheduled so that they'll be doing the work in 2018. And, so they've been extending it, they've asked for extension since, the original permit. So tonight their permit expires the end of January, so they're asking for another 1-year extension on that.
All right, now, is that for completion or,
It's for implementation. They
Implementation.
haven't done anything yet
Yeah.
on the site.
so it's really initiation? Yeah.
And then we have a town board referral to discuss some alternative locations for the proposed basketball court and playground and parking at Town Hall. And then a couple of planning board referrals, Lamini to 402 Sorrow Street. That's the one where we issued a violation for the extensive clearing of the steep slopes and wetland buffer area on Sorrow Street.
Yep.
And they came in front of the planning board just to, let them know what had been done, and the planning board is interested in doing a joint, walk with the environmental board, to, coordinate the type of restoration and remediation that, would be required.
Now, wasn't there a proposed remediation?
Yeah, and the planning board deferred, they did not want to discuss it in any detail.
Oh, until
after
a site
they
visit?
did a site visit with our board,
Right.
and then at that point discuss, what level of, mitigation, restoration, at that point, they felt it was too premature to get into any details until they really saw, the site.
Good.
And then,
Were they made aware? Were you at the planning board meeting
yes,
or,
yeah,
okay?
and we sent them the same information, they got copies of all the photographs and the violation, and then they had also, the applicant had sent the same plans that they had sent us.
And did you convey to the planning board the essence of what our reaction had been
Yes, yeah.
when we met
Yeah.
with the consultants,
And
et
the
cetera?
planning board pretty much had the same reaction.
They had the same reaction as we had. Good.
And then the last item is Bagnacki at 60 Iddingwood. It's, they were in front of the planning board this past Tuesday. It's the one where they are doing an accessory apartment or cottage, on the property, and it's within the environmental overlay and within the buffer. And they had been back in front of us in November,
This is
Yeah.
the old cabin house
Yeah.
right on the road.
right on the road that,
Ah, okay.
that they're replacing, and,
Right.
so they looked at, we had indicated back then, that we were comfortable with the 70 to 75 foot, distance from the wetland buffer with appropriate mitigation. They're in front of the planning board, and the planning board was not comfortable with that, and they asked the applicant to go back kind of to the drawing board and look at, and give us more information on what the delta was for impacts within the buffer by different distances and different changes to the plan. In essence, they wanted a smaller footprint of disturbance within the wetland buffer. So they've asked them to go back, and kind of provide some alternative options for, the board, and it was kind of left open-ended, so I think they're looking just for some general recommendations from how comfortable we feel
Isn't it
with.
they wanted to push it back away from the street?
They wanted it,
Originally?
well, that was the zoning board, not so much the planning board.
Okay.
Well, so we've got different
There's
viewpoints
different-
here.
Yeah, because the zoning board's charter is to get it up, back
Yeah.
outside of the front yard setback, where the planning board looks more at the site impacts and things like that, and slopes and
More holistically.
yeah, and, so that, so it's a different, viewpoint, but they, ask the applicant to go back and really take and have their consultants really see what they could do to show the different impacts of different, different scenarios, by how they could reduce, disturbance and impervious cover, that kind of thing.
Well, there might also be additional opportunities for what we call mitigation, which would
Right.
really be improvement.
Right.
So that might be a way of satisfying more people.
So what I suggest we have Jerry Barrett here, and he's representing 50 North Place and Bucknacky, so, why don't we have him cover those two, and then we'll go back and pick up the other items.
Right. As I mentioned to you, Jeremy had texted me while I was on the train saying that he was running late and asking if we could push the basketball court conversation to the end of the agenda.
Okay.
I told him we should probably be able to do that. He'll probably be here sometime between 8:45 and 9, he said.
I probably should just point out to the board too, and Victoria, chime in, is Victoria and I have discussed last year, before I was out, and, she's interested in trying to kind of revitalize the conservation board and get the members more active on, specific projects, and so she would like to have, the conservation board meet separately, to start working on, getting projects going, and then still, have it open, our meetings are public, so, to have the conservation board participate if they wanted to in field trips or, and coming to our meetings as well.
I think it's useful to have the conservation board perspective on some of the things that we deal with.
And also, from time to time, we've done things over the years that have actually been joint projects. I mean, for instance.
Yes, we have.
The drafting of the tree ordinance, and, et cetera.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it almost
you know,
feels like a parallel track, the one track of kind of meeting separately to plan and implement, and also to be present here, to weigh in when appropriate and to do, as you're saying, collaborative work. So-
Yeah, because years ago when we started meeting together, it was partly.
It was to
to
save your
me
time, right? Right.
Yeah,
Right.
because there was a lot of.
Victoria blew that all up,
Right.
didn't she? Yeah, okay.
But there was a lot of
Did you get an
overlap.
appropriation from the town board to pay him extra?
No, no.
But there was a lot of overlap and, and so, but I think part of it is, to really get, focus on key projects for the conservation board, and there's plenty out there. that
Right, we had one brainstorming session and many issues came up, and we're gonna meet again to lay out the plan for the year, so. But we'll certainly bring it back here and see if there's anything you wanna partner with us on or add to that.
Well, when we did some trail work, this was a source of extra people power.
Yep. Okay, so Jerry, we're ready for you.
Okay, so we'll do 50 North Place. The board will remember 50 North Place is, it's right off of DeVoe Road. And how did we get in here again? Wasn't there a driveway?
Right off North Place, there's a driveway.
So right in here, this is the access, it swings around, and house was up in here. This is that very, very large, wet, depressional, wet meadow right in here. And what they have is they have a culvert right in this area, which is this area right here. You can see the culvert, you can see the sump there, you can see that wet meadow right in here. And then we have that's subject area 1. Subject area 2 is right over here on the property line. This is the water course that leaves the property. And there is a well feature. There is a submerged well. It's right in here somewhere. And if you blow it up, it's probably right in this area. There's a berm here, but we're gonna talk about this area first. So what was happening apparently is there's a berm here, there's a pump, and the pump apparently, because it's outdoors in the weather, it fails, and they're constantly having to replace the pump. They don't get to replace the pump. This area floods and becomes a nuisance to the neighbors, I guess, in terms of mosquitoes. Neighbors are complaining water in their basements, but I discussed it with Steve, I can't see how that's possible, because it's so much lower, but I guess it's something to complain about. So they wanna get rid of the pump and let this thing just continue to drain like it used to, and just drain out of the property. So, a couple of things. Number one, in this area here, right now, it's basically, it comes in here and it's like a hole, it's just a pit. And with high sides, it's up to 594. The bottom of it's at 591.3. So it's a pit. So what we thought we'd do here, instead of letting this back up, what we would do is we would open this up. So we would pull these contours out. So instead of it coming out and just boom, we're gonna drag it all out. It's gonna allow the water to more easily get out into the meadow. So it won't be backing up. It still has to go up a little bit to get to 592. It's coming in, but before it had to go from 91.3 up to 94 before it got out. Now it's got to go from 91.3 to 92 to get out. So it's gonna be able to rise and push its way out and get into the meadow. So essentially, all we need to do is come in here with an excavator. Put up the appropriate erosion controls. Come in here with an excavator, put a tracking pad in this area, and basically just reshape it with a contour, load the material onto the dump truck. It's a large site, there's a place, we'll find an upland place to get rid of the material, and then we just reseed it, and that's how we would handle that area. Area 2, down in here, that requires the removal of the berm, and so that's really where more of the heavy lifting has to be done.
Jerry, just one question, you might wanna explain to the board that the existing pipe
Oh, right,
will remain.
there's an existing pipe that goes from here to here. We looked in there, you can barely see it, it's clogged, it's been clogged with sediment for years. So we're just gonna abandon it, we're not gonna rip it out, we're just gonna leave it there. Otherwise we'd have to rip up the whole meadow, and it's not doing anything anyway, so we'll just leave it there.
What's it made of?
Anything
I think it's a
seeping?
corrugated metal pipe, and it's rotted out, and it's trashed, it's not working. And I think that's part of the reason why the flows were backing up, is because it has to go in, it has to fill up to 594 before it can spill out and get into the meadow. If it
What size
wasn't-
pipe is it?
Pardon?
What size pipe?
I think it was like an 18. It's on the survey. I think it was on the survey.
I thought for safety's sake, is it worth just trying to crush it? Just so nobody crawls in and gets stuck?
I think that's a great idea, and I think that's exactly what they do, is they would just crush the end of it with the bucket, and we could put a note on the plan to make sure that happens.
Yeah.
So we can do that.
There's
So-
nothing trapped in there that might be alive or functional, that needs to be removed before it's shut off.
Yeah, it was pretty well mudded up when I was
Clogged
there
up
last
with
time.
mud.
It's pretty well mudded up. I mean, you can just see the rim of it. I mean, it's packed. It's impacted. It's close up. So this is the berm. You can see the 95 contour. It comes in here and then it comes out over here. So you got the 95 contour. You've got a high point of 93.6 in the meadow. Basically, there's a low point in the meadow. It comes in here. We got a low point in the meadow that's about 93.17, something like that, and we got a high point here. So, if this is 93.1 and, we're coming out, it is so flat, it's amazing.
It's a half a foot between the low point and the high.
So we're gonna be here at 92, so we're gonna be, it's less than 1%. It's flatter than a tennis court, if you will. The tennis court is 1%, so it's flatter than that. So the only way water really moves, it has to build up and then it pushes itself out. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna take out this berm that's right in here, and this is a cross section, I'm not sure if this is in your way. But in cross section, here's the berm that's right here, and that's this feature right in here. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take that berm out, and we're gonna create a long open swale, a long broad swale So the existing grade is here, we're gonna put it down here, we're gonna take it out. And we've got 91.67 is the low point. So we've got 92 here, here's the 92 contour, so we're gonna be pushing that back. We're gonna take the 93 contour, we're gonna push it back through the 94 and through the 95. And through, there's the 93 again, and we're gonna pull it in here. And then we're gonna put a high point of 93.6 here, so this is gonna become the flow path. So once the water rises to 93.6, it's gonna be able to get over and flow out. So there's still gonna be resident time in the meadow, there's no question about it. But it's gonna have a way out now. Before it was getting held up by the 95. So once, that would fill to 95, and once it filled to 95, then it was flooding all the way up here. But now it won't do that. It'll still flood, but it'll only be right in the middle.
Is there a stagnation issue here?
I don't think so.
Well, there has been with, when the pumps are turned off, it backs up, and that's what neighbors have, been concerned about.
Okay, so this addresses that issue.
Well, because before it could fill up to 95. Now it's gonna fill up to 93.6 before it releases itself. So there's just not enough cross pitch across the meadow. So it is going to still sit there, but not, instead of being, this deep, it's gonna be this deep. And when it gets deeper, it encroaches closer to the neighbors, and I think that's what they're seeing, because the 95 contour is way out here. So, the 95 contour is out here.
What's around the edge of, in other words, are there plantings at all around the edge, or is it just soil?
I think there's a fence, I think, on the property line, and it's just open meadow, just open meadow.
Is it like a functional meadow? In other words, or is it overgrown with invasive
It's
stuff?
mostly invasive now. The history of it is a long history, which, you might not be familiar with, but when the Conger family owned it, he had an agricultural use exemption. And, with the agricultural district, he was permitted to put this irrigation system in.
For farming purposes?
His plan was to use it for farming purposes.
But did he ever really use it for that?
He never really got that far. He had a couple of farm animals, but not.
Right,
not-
I remember he had some livestock, but that was it, right?
Yeah.
He has like a gentleman's farm.
Right, didn't really
Yeah.
plant
And
anything?
then apparently he had several illnesses, and that kind of curtailed his ability to do what he wanted, but.
Are there any erosion issues around, like would that be anything we would aspire to planting anything there?
There's really not much velocity going on there because it's so flat.
Yeah.
It just has to kind of build itself up and push itself out.
Where will the water go once you remove the berm?
It leaves the site right here, where it goes, and it just flows out and just continues on its way. And it'll do that. That's what it does now. When it gets.
Is that where the pump discharges?
Yes.
Yeah,
So it's the same, it's the same outflow locations, just happening without
Yeah,
the
and this-
benefit of the pump.
And this works its way down into Heptaqua Lake and Whippoorwill Lake, if you're familiar with those, on the other side of Hates Cross Road.
It goes under Hates Cross and into those. Those were those man-made lakes for they have a little water district in town many years ago, and they use those lakes.
It used to be called Chiselhurst.
Yeah.
So, this
No,
is.
that was actually
on the market.
an emergency water supply.
Yeah, it probably could function as that. Yeah.
So this ends up mitigating the depth of the water buildup from this to this.
Yeah, and I guess it creates less of a nuisance, and I guess the problem is that Steve keeps getting calls, that they're complaining that it's flooded again, and
And what's the concern? Stagnant water and mosquitoes and things like that?
and they're claiming that their basements are flooding because of this, but, their
How
houses are
is
so
that
much higher.
possible? Right.
I can't see how that's possible, but
The fact that you're still gonna have some standing water,
there's no question.
as opposed to putting in like a drain field and trying to pipe it out.
Even with that, there's no way to daylight it, even if we did it. Even if we put a pipe in there, we put a curtain drain in, it would fill up with water, and there's no way to daylight it, because there's no grade
This is
change.
such a,
It's,
Because you can't get it to the point of exit, it's still higher.
yeah, there's just no way, it's a wet meadow, and it's always gonna be a wet meadow.
Yeah.
Unless, the only way you would be able to dry it out is what they tried to do with the pump. And like shoveling against the tide, I guess, it just didn't work, and they claimed that they changed the pump several times, and they're just tired of it, the bank who owns the property is just tired of it. And they said, why don't we just abandon it, and they approached Steve with it, and that's how we ended up, you know, with the town allowed it.
Which bank owns it?
The company, the client is Altisource, and I deal with their agent who's out of Long Island, and he deals with them, and
Yeah, they're probably a property management firm for the bank.
yeah, I don't even know where they're, I mean, we had to get the application signed, and it was a real ordeal, because it had to come from overseas, and it was a real ordeal to get it signed. So I'm not quite sure who the owner is, but they have an owner's rep who signed it.
Can I just ask how large, we're talking about the area that they own around this meadow? And where are the houses?
There's
There's the
only
property
one-
line,
There's
right?
one house,
Okay, so
It's
right there.
about 10 acres.
I think it's slightly over 10.
Yeah,
Maybe
10.6.
11.
So short of digging like infiltration wells, this is the best you can do with the,
yeah.
As I remember, the water table is
Very high.
all over there.
and that's why it's not draining.
Quite high.
That's why you're not
So,
getting.
I mean, I don't know how you do an infiltrate, I think, you know what, I think if we went and dug it all out, we'd make a pond, is what would
Yeah,
would
but
happen.
you'd have to excavate a lot.
You know,
So
but
there really
I,
isn't, of the options you can do, this is,
Probably the best.
there's really no other option to,
There's not a good solution.
right,
No,
you can't dig a pit, you can't drain it out, you can't.
yeah, it's always gonna be a wet meadow.
I mean, when I think of a wet meadow, I think of like the joys, native plants around the wet meadow and, you know, winterberry and all, I mean, would we,
This is
there
more like
really is
soggy
no
muck.
potential to put anything there that could actually be an environmental benefit and actually maybe reduce the mosquitoes because you get more wildlife eating the mosquitoes kind of thing?
Well, we do have quite a bit of, there's quite a bit of disturbance, I mean, it's upset, we have to just in order to make this work, we've got to disturb 17,000 square feet, which is, it's short of a half an acre, but just because we have to drag it back so far to get it to drain, but, we are going to plant it with a wet meadow mix, so, there are things like fox sedge and, there's a lot of sedges in there, we've got.
Any lobelia, like anything that'll draw birds to eat the mosquitoes?
Turtle head is in there, that might do it. Some wool grass, manna grass, if, we could certainly spread out some.
That's a nice natural way to deal with the mosquitoes,
So
to get the
we-
birds in
we
there.
could
Yeah,
certainly
just-
add some,
I'm just not sure how
some
effective,
shrubbery
yeah.
to it, and, if you wanted to do that, clethra, leave the deer one, but, the winterberries and all that, but I think that's an inexpensive thing to do.
It can't do harm to try, I mean, if it sustains itself, because they wouldn't be necessarily required to
The
sustain it.
difficulty is it's such a dense layer of invasives,
Yeah,
is to, they're gonna remove it, but the seed stock is still gonna be there, so,
Right,
it's gonna
it may
come
just
back.
grow back.
yeah. So
and
that's
they
why
wouldn't be required to try to maintain the,
I think it's beyond the scope of, I think they're basically restoring it back to more of a natural function, without the.
Right, they're just trying to help at this point
Yeah,
to.
and it eliminates the need for an electrical pump and the use of storing water in a big concrete chamber. That's, they designed it to be an irrigation, a tank basically that he was gonna use then to water his crops, which I'm not quite sure why, because
Concrete
the
tank,
water
that would
table
just
is
leave it
right
in
at the
place.
surface most of the time, but,
Just to
yeah.
knock it out, crack the bottom and let it.
Yeah, so we'll put a note on that too, that's to be crushed and destroyed.
Yeah, crack the bottom.
So yeah, I don't really, there's really not much else, we think, we're not sure what else to do, to tell you the truth. But, certainly if you think it'll help to get some shrubbery in there, I don't think the client would object, I think they just wanna see this maintenance nightmare go away.
I mean, all the sedges will bring frogs in, I mean, again, seriously, like, what will eat the mosquitoes,
Yeah.
the larvae and all that, so
But
the amphibians and reptiles would be good to have in there. And the grasses will help with that.
And what will soak up some water.
True,
Yeah.
true,
So, happy to add that to the plans.
thank you.
Any other thoughts? Do you guys remember the history of the property? on it?
Oh, yeah.
Do you wanna know?
Always like history.
I mean, it was one of the most contentious properties, because Mr. Cogger was
Tom was
instrumental.
pretty contentious.
Yeah, he was very much a, farmer and, private property, I can do what I want with my property, and, so it was always wetlands, and, he just was able to get the property included in the agricultural district, and so that allowed him to work with the state Ag and Markets Board, and the town challenged this plan, but we lost, in our, legal challenge with, the New York Ag and Markets Board, so they, allowed the, system to go in, and then unfortunately.
Well, at that time.
At that time, and then unfortunately he got sick and, didn't really implement, what the long-term vision was, and he was unwilling to do some of the corrective action that we requested, and, so it kind of just sat there for years on that. So,
Is the
it's-
property for sale or is it still?
It's for sale, and there are a couple of individuals that have expressed interest in keeping it as there's really very limited development potential because of the wetlands and, slope area and, septic capabilities.
I don't know that it would ever be more than one lot, because I think this is the only road frontage, it's like a flag lot.
Yeah.
So, you'd need to have a lot, you gotta have 250 feet of road frontage, I think it's one lot.
Is there space to build? Like, where, is there really,
Oh yeah, this is all upland right
There's a
here.
ton of space.
Yeah, all this is upland, up in here.
is it like healthy land, or?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's, you can see it here, it's, once you get out of the wet meadow, it's, it's kind of a wooded area, and he's got some open areas up in the back. Kind of a big rolling, sprawling house that looks like it's been added onto a couple times, I think it's a knockdown for whoever comes in.
So you comfortable with the concept and favor of granting a permit for the work?
For the time being, I think that's a solution to a current problem. I expect that will change at some time in the future when somebody actually buys the property and wants to try to do something with it.
Turn it back into a lake then?
But in the meantime, it addresses an existing problem.
It's our prepare a wetland permit with the conditions of, that they add a note to the plan, that they crush the pipe, the existing pipe, so that eliminates the safety, concern. And then also
Yeah.
to add a shrub layer, add 35 native shrubs and edge.
David suggested, I think it's a
Crack,
good idea.
crack the
And then
the slab of the.
cracking the tank open as well.
Is it all the way deep? The things we're crushing are deep in the soil?
You just break it up so water drains through, it doesn't,
Yeah.
Yes,
the water
it's
doesn't
buried.
rise and create a,
It's-
But none of
hazard.
wildlife won't start scratching their feet and bodies on this
Well-
jagged edges.
Well, we want to
Just
open it
curious.
up so they don't get trapped in there, actually. Yeah.
Right, so is it deep? In other words, I'm just wondering, is it superficial?
It's a very deep tank that's about, 15 feet deep in the ground.
So there are
A
best
concrete
practices
tube.
around
It's
how
like a
to do
swimming
that in a
pool.
safe
Yeah.
way? I'm sure there must
Yeah,
be, right?
they'll take the top off of it and they'll crush it and they'll crush the sides and crush the bottom and then just bury it.
So we can maybe just add those notes
Yeah.
into the plan.
Okay, good.
Is anybody gonna be wading through there? I hope
You know
not.
what, when we had to send the surveyors out because I had to do a grading plan and they didn't have any topo. Well, before the surveyors could come out, they had to bring a crew in to cut down the invasives. We had to mark out for them, so the surveyors couldn't even get in there because it was like this, you couldn't even walk through it, there's a jungle, there's roof strife, and you can't even walk through that stuff. And so, you couldn't even, you're like going like this to try to get through it all, and it took us a heck of a time just to find this.
well, do you have to decommission the electric service to the?
Yeah, we got a
to
note
the
there,
pump?
that's gotta come out, we got a note on there
Okay.
to be done by a licensed electrician, all that's gotta come out.
Come out.
Which I think is probably a good thing, it's just, there's the panels right out here, it's an electric plant, sit down in the middle of the meadow.
Are any of the remains gonna be carted out?
Well, I think that in terms of the concrete crushing, that'll probably just get buried.
Well, yeah.
But at this point, we're just saying, you know, take the excavated material, I mean, we did the earthwork on it. It looks like we've got about 232 yards, so, you know, that's at least.
What about
Well-
the pump machinery itself?
Yeah, because you could argue that concrete is sort of quasi-natural.
Right.
The pump is not.
Oh, no, all that has to come out.
So that,
All the
that's going
electrical
to dispute.
appurtenances, all that comes out. The wiring, the
Yeah.
pumps, the panels,
Yeah,
all that
okay.
comes out.
Discarded offsite.
Right.
But the 232 yards, maybe roughly 10 to 15 dump truck loads, they're gonna find a spot. I think we got a note on the plan, in an upland area, and I mean, you could see that they've got areas like this, that, you know, it's kind of, this place looks like it's been in the works for years. Not in very good shape.
Just one other clarification about the plants. So are you're adding the shrubbery, but are you keeping the grasses and sedges that you originally wanted, so it's in
We're
addition
gonna
to
add
that?
We're gonna add to it.
Okay, that's great.
And this slope, how it gets grassed.
And, you know, we'll net them and, you know, and do the best they can, you know, they're really gonna have to go back and they're gonna have to weed whack around them for the first year or two. You know, we'll put a note on the plan on that, because if they don't,
Will just be
they'll
consumed.
just be consumed.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just one thought on that, should we do a 5-year maintenance and monitoring, just to make sure the material
That's
survives?
been our general practice.
You know what, if you don't, it won't get done.
Yeah, yeah.
Because even when you do, sometimes it doesn't get done.
Okay, so that would be a condition of the permit.
All right, so we'll put it together. Okay.
Sounds like there's no chance to survive, but
Yeah, and it's gonna be tough with the deer
just be a pocket of
population.
a pump.
Yeah,
What's fenced over, so
you'll keep replanting for 5 years. That's what it
And then
comes
it'll be
down
gone.
to. Yeah.
Although it's an interesting question, I mean, there are professionals, I'm sure, like, you know, like, Larry, I can't remember his last name, who's a meadow person, you know, they come in, they know what to remove, how to really create a meadow that after 3 to 5 years actually, you know, maintains itself. It's self-supporting, and that you have the deep enough root systems. So, I don't know if we would ever encourage people to work with folks like that who can take a meadow and actually, you know, in 5 years, you really have something that makes, Larry Weaver, do you know Larry Weaver who does the meadow work?
I've seen his, he offers seminars on this, and
Yeah,
very
he's like the
interesting stuff,
master.
yeah.
So anyway, that's, you know, that he uses an approach that really is sustainable. So just FYI, if we ever have the right property that seems like worth recommending his approaches.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it than people think. It's not just putting some seed down, there's a lot to it.
Right.
So there's a lot of work up front, but like you said, once it's in, it's self-sustaining. Yeah. Okay, so this is the McNaghy property at Anywood Road. It's a 13-acre site. Merrick McNaghy and his family is here tonight.
Good evening.
And this project had gone through a pretty long review process. The ERB will remember, we came to the ERB because what happened was when the Bagnagis first moved in, you know, this property again was, it was let go, and every weekend the family was out there working, and there was some tree removal that was taken out here. It's, of course, here's a water course, we got a wetland system, here's the wetland right in through here. This is the wetland line, the blue line, and it comes down and feeds into these two ponds. So there was some tree removal that came out here, and so, was there a violation, Steve?
No,
There was no violation, but Steve requested that this be replanted. At the same time, there's an existing cottage on the property, which is it's right there, and that's the cottage. So we got Vales Lane here, and we got Anywood Road here. And the old farmhouse, the main house is here, there's a swimming pool, there's a barn, there's a garage, and then there was the cottage, and the cottage was about 9 feet off of the road, and was really in a state of disrepair. So what happened was, the Bagnagis wanted to rebuild the cottage. When they went to rebuild the cottage and get a building permit, I think they were directed to the zoning board. And the zoning board felt, 9 feet off of Vales Lane is very close, and they were given a variance to put it 40 feet off of Vales Lane, which is here. So that is the plan that we came and we reviewed with this board. Because at that time, when I approached staff, the town planner felt that this was an ERB matter. We went through the whole process, if you recall, we talked about, we were really in two areas, we talked about, you know, the mitigation that was gonna be, you know, in where the cottage area is, we talked about what we were gonna do around the ponds. This was the area in the ponds, you recall that we were gonna do a evergreen buffer planting, to put some privacy between the properties. We were going to go through this channel here. It's got very steep sides. We were going to comb back the sides, stabilize it with rocks and plantings, and kind of make a native riparian edge. We were going to take out some of this invasive. There's a lot of invasive brush in here, and they really don't have very good views or access to the pond. We're going to take that out and plant some short meadow with some shrubs and trees and forests. In this area, there were going to be some walking trails around it. You know, we really went through this, I think this board reviewed this 2 or 3 times, and, you know, we had approved planting lists for the east property, we had another approved planting list for over by the cottage, we showed the fencing, we're gonna put a new fence because the deer just decimate their garden, and so we're putting a fence up in there, and everything was going along nicely, and then what happened was, I think Merrick tried to get a building permit, and we were informed that, by the building inspector, Bill Maskeel, he's since retired, said, well, wait a minute, this has gotta go to the planning board because it's an accessory apartment. So all of a sudden, the approving authority shifted to the planning board from the ERB, so we essentially had to kind of start up again. So what we did, we went to the planning board, and we submitted, the first time we went to the planning board was in March of 17. And we submitted basically the plans that we reviewed and this board approved. And at that point, you know, we got it was an initial discussion with the planning board, and we got a memo from, you know, planning and engineering, and we said, okay, go do your stormwater management, blah, 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 and come back. In the interim, Merrick had cleared, this was a really nasty area here, and after the ERB had approved the mitigation that we were gonna take all this out, all this invasive out, and we were gonna replant it. I think Merrick took the stuff out. I think there was a disconnect. He didn't realize he had to wait for the permit to do it, and he went and did it. Steve got a call, went out there and saw that it was all taken out. But in that, it was kind of, that's what it was going to be anyway. It was passed on to the planning board and advised this is what happened. There was some debris left in here. Merrick was instructed to take it out. He took it out. At that point, the owners noticed that, you know, they never really saw what this looked like until they cleared it out, and it was kind of it kind of sloped up a little bit. It was a rocky ledge, and it just seemed to make a little more sense to the owners that why don't we push the building back a little farther and get it out of this broad swale that's always kind of mushy anyway, and get it a little bit farther off of the street and more opportunities for buffering. So that was the plan we went into with the planning board. And so what we went in was, when we talked to the planning board, we said, okay, this is where we were. This is the existing cottage. The existing cottage was 9 feet off of Vales Lane. This is what was approved right here. This was the one that this board reviewed previously. And that one was 40 feet off. And in December, we came in and we showed this one, and this one would be 10 feet back. So the difference is that when the ERB looked at this plan and approved the plan, there was 80 feet from the back of the cottage to the wetland. And this plan showed 70 feet. And I think we were before your board in November of last year, and we showed several different options. In fact, we even showed you this option, and this was what we called the zoning compliant option. And we were only 48 feet to the thing, and the board said, no, that's too close. And we had discussions, and at that time, you remember I had a rain garden up in here. Since then, Alan Pilch, the engineer on the project, found out that that wasn't gonna work. He had to move it down. But remember, we had the discussion that my problem was we had to get the water to flow by gravity to the rain garden? So I think the board felt somewhere between 70 and 75 feet to the wetland might be the magic number based on how you can get the water to the rain garden. So we went back to the planning board and we showed it at 70 feet. But at that point in time, Alan had to push the rain garden down to a lower elevation because he couldn't get it to work here. He needed sufficient volume, and he finally found he had soil to do it here. So when we got to the planning board and we discussed this, there was a lot of back and forth of, you know, it was a lot of back and forth of where we are, how we got here, where we're going, and we were more or less instructed to, they wanted to talk about, you know, what are some options, what are the various impacts, and they said, you know what, maybe you gotta go back and put some more thoughts together on this, go talk to the ERB and get the ERB's position on this, and then come back and talk to us. So that's where we are now. So what we've done is we've done kind of a cover, what we've done is we've taken this part of the property and we've called it the subject area. And we've done basically a cover type summary in this subject area. So the total property is about 13 acres. The subject area, which is this in that red line, that's about 3.34 acres. There's about 1.34 acres of wetland in that subject area. There's about 1.87 acres of wetland buffer, because here's the buffer line, so you can see with a 150-foot buffer, it's the whole thing. Area dominated by invasive species, that was this. And that was at about 27,000. Area of upland is just really, the upland area is, it's this right here. No, I think it's some of that, you know, some of the buffer is upland, and that's in that area. So we had about, you know, the upland is mainly a lawn, about 0.7 acres. We had about existing buildings, including the cottage, about 1,980 square feet, and we broke it down to walls. So then, what we've done now is we basically have 5 different scenarios. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different scenarios. And in every one of these scenarios, you know, the area of the wetland and the area of the buffer, none of that's gonna change. What's gonna change is, and really, in the existing condition, there's the cottage, it had a footprint of 485 square feet. All the rest of them have a footprint of 1,123 square feet, where the cottage, that right there is a covered porch. So that the cottage is really right here, that's 960 square feet. Town code says you can have an accessory apartment if it's under 1,000 square feet, so it meets that requirement. So what happened was, in the plan that this board saw previously, we had parked over by the barn, and you know, about 180-foot walkway down to get to the cottage. At our March 17th meeting with the planning board, they said, well, isn't that gonna be terribly inconvenient to walk all that way with your groceries? And maybe you should consider putting in a driveway. And, you know, at that point, we were kind of holding back on the driveway idea because we felt that another curb cut might not be, you know, a lot of times I don't like to approve too many curb cuts, it already has 2. But we showed it, and we got in there, and this month, we were before the planning board, and they said, look, this just looks like too much disturbance. You know, we had shown the wall that we talked about, we had shown it 70 feet, they felt the driveway was too big, and they said, you know, maybe that driveway is just too big. We agreed that it was too generous, we showed 2 parking spots. So what we did was we came up with another plan that if you just take that same driveway, you could probably take that same driveway and just make it to accommodate 1 car and get rid of that extra. So in the December 17th plan, we had about 2,500 square feet of basically what I'm gonna call development coverage, because the building coverage is not gonna change, because the size of the cottage is the size of the cottage. So the development coverage in the plan, the December plan we showed to the planning board, was 2,500 square feet. However, if you go with this concept, and you just make that a smaller driveway, you can get that down to 1,755 square feet, where it's 200 square feet for the walk, and then you've got about 1,500 square feet for the driveway. And what this blue indicates, because I know this board was concerned about water quality, and that was what this was all about, how do we treat the water before it gets to the wetland? So Alan has positioned the rain garden in this area so we can get 100% of the building and pretty much the entire driveway into that rain garden. So that was a benefit, and that's the way it was, you know, that's the way it was in the plan we showed the planning board. We were also able to get most of that driveway into the rain garden. Another alternative, with this plan, Steve reviewed the plan, he suggested that we move this wall. We had shown the wall in December in this area, and what we did was, Steve asked we make it closer and we make it continuous. We stopped the wall here and he felt the continuous barrier, so that's an option that, you know, for consideration. Would that be?
What's the purpose of the wall?
To make a permanent barrier between the maintained areas and the restored wetland buffer, which is something you guys ask for a lot.
Yeah, we do.
So another thing that came up said, well, what if you took the driveway and put the driveway on the other side, could you get, you know, could you reduce the development coverage from the driveway? So we did that too. So if you took this driveway in this area, and this is, that's A, so this one brings it down to 1,450 square feet. So we went from the 2,500 to 1,755, now we're down to 1,450 square feet.
Does that include the building? Or is that just the
That's
the
just,
driveway?
yeah, because the only
It's just
delta, the
driveway.
only thing that's changing is the driveway, the building is the building.
Right.
And again, this building is still in the same position where it's 70 feet. And the original ZBA approved plan, the plan that this board saw, the first time around was 80 feet to the wetland. So the planning board was wrestling with that 70, 80 feet number. And it's a juggling act, because the farther we can get it away, the more planting we can do in between and create a hedgerow between it. But the issue here is, while this makes a smaller driveway, this part of the driveway, we can't get into the rain garden. Once again, we got a very flat site. We can only get this much of the driveway to go to the rain garden and 100% of the building. So while we can get the number down, we can't get as much of the driveway to go into the rain garden to treat it. Now, you know, maybe we can do grass swales or some other measures, but that was kind of the limitation to that one. So, you know, we were thinking more on what we can do, and I had discussions with Merrick last week, and I think Merrick had a suggestion that I thought was a good one. And what we talked about was, what if we took, again, here's the building, that was the ZBA approved building. The last two plans we looked at, you know, we've been looking at them pretty much just shifted back from the original building. But in this case, what this one would do is this one would shift it more northerly and get it closer. And so the plan that we had shown, the ZBA had the plan, I think, was it 50 feet from the driveway? Was it 50 feet? Well, the critical number was the 80 feet. The planning board liked the 80 feet. And Merrick made a good observation where he said, well, you see how the wetland line bends back here? What if we shifted it up, we can get the 80 feet again, and where we had 50 feet to the street with the last plan we showed the planning board, this one's 40 feet, we have 49 feet. So really we have pretty much the 49, 50 feet, and we still have the 80 feet to the wetland. So, you know, the last time we talked 70 to 75 might be a good number, this was 80, it gets it closer. Then the next question came up, you know, if you use the existing driveway, and you didn't have a parking area, you still got about 160 feet to walk. But so in that plan, just like that, we can get the disturbance in the development disturbance in the wetland buffer down to 570 square feet. If we put a driveway in, which seems to make more sense in terms of using the cottage, I think, if we did it on this side, we can get this area of the driveway to drain into the rain garden. The rain garden's a fixed thing because he's got to go where he's got the soil. We can't change that. So in this scenario, and I was just chatting with the owners, and they would actually prefer to have the driveway on this side, to the right of this building. Thing is, I don't know that we'd be able to get, I'm not sure we'd be able to get this water to run to the rain garden. But in any event, that would be about 1,380 square feet. So if you had a driveway, whether it be here or here, you'd probably have about 1,380 square feet of development coverage in the wetland buffer. If you don't have the driveway and you just rely on the pea gravel path, you've got about 570. So what we're talking about is, in the March 17th plan, this is really going back, that plan had about 594 square feet of development coverage. Because remember, we didn't have a driveway on this one. So we're really coming back full circle. If you get rid of this driveway, and then this one's about 594, 600, this is, I think this number's, you know, we did this quickly by hand. It's probably gonna be a little bit less than that, but because the building's moved probably, 30, 40 feet up, so, the thing is, if you didn't do that, and you relied on, lugging your groceries or whatever to the cottage, you can really get it down to let's say 600 square feet in the buffer. If you put the driveway in, and, you made it more, what I would say, normal and customary, you'd probably be up at about, let's say 1,400 square feet, so, 600, it's about an 800 square foot delta if you go with the driveway in there, and that's with this one. So it seems that by shifting it to the north, it seems it helps in a couple ways, that it gets the 80 feet back that everybody seems to be comfortable
Is it
with.
practical to even think that a house, that's a house. It needs repair, it needs maintenance, it needs access. So it doesn't make sense not to put some way to get to it that is safe.
Right, the plumber comes, what's he gonna do?
He's not gonna lug he's gonna either drive all the way down or he's gonna make his own. So the concept of not providing some sort of
Yeah, you gotta be
egress
reasonable
access
about
doesn't
that.
make any
Yeah.
sense. Right.
Yeah.
So
I didn't
that's,
think of that, but that's a very good point, because people would just end up driving on the grass and you'd have a mud.
so,
So,
practically,
and I chatted with Steve about it, and, if there's an 800 square foot delta, we talked about doing a heck of a lot more mitigation based on, those last conversations that we've had with this board, particularly, at the November meeting, when we met with you guys in November, and at that point in time, we agreed that, to allow this shift in the building, we agreed that, we were going to add this wall, and of course now, we could put the wall in the way Steve suggested. We talked about adding more plants, and what Steve said is, when you're said and done here, he wants a comparative. This is what was approved the first time you guys had reviewed this, this is what we're doing now, and this is what we're doing in addition. And we talked about the last time, we only had shrubs and forbs, and now we're talking about actually getting trees back in here and trying to, revegetate this with trees. So I think that there's a lot of opportunities for mitigation that can offset that extra 800 square feet.
On the
And to
property,
have-
on the property.
Yeah,
mitigation.
all on the property, and by pushing it back, it lets us, and, one of the things we pointed out to the planning board, that, this is a large swath right through here, and the owners wanna plant it, so I mean, we were talking about taking out 4,000 square feet of grass and turning it into hedgerow. I think that's a huge plus. And, it's better for the neighborhood, it's private for the owners, I thought it was a win-win. So that's where we are with it, and the owners would like to move it along. They've been through the review process for a while, and so we're here tonight to get feedback from this board to see, what direction should we go back to the planning board?
the driveway is all gravel or is it partially paved?
Gravel.
It's all gravel.
So what specifically was the planning board's major concern, Jeff?
Well, it was really it was really kind of an odd meeting, because they seemed to focus on the disturbance in the buffer, and they said, well, we don't have any comparative information. I said, well, fine, we'll give you the comparative information, but not that much changes, because we're only talking about a driveway, so we can make it smaller, we can put it on the other side. And then they said, well, why do you need a driveway at all? And one of the board members was talking about, I guess in, what's the reader's, Chappaqua Crossing, that, well, some of those residents have to walk a long way to get with their groceries to their, it kind of like went off on a tangent, I thought. And then, we were questioned why we put the driveway in and, all this development coverage, and we were stunned because it was their recommendation in the March meeting. They said, well, why don't you have a driveway there? Doesn't that make more sense to have a driveway? And we were like, and
So
then,
what has to come down to make the driveways are heavily wooded there?
no, it's all open.
It's all over.
They're just,
Right off the road
they're just concerned that putting the driveway in adds more disturbance in the buffer?
to the buffer.
Yes,
And that,
and so,
so we're talking about additional
But it's
mitigation.
an area
But it's
that
a
is
gravel driveway too, it's not a
practical.
tarred
Right,
driveway.
Right.
Right, I mean, it's between,
And it's an
it's
opportunity for additional mitigation.
it's to the upland side
Yeah.
of the buffer. I mean, it's right off the road.
well,
Functioning buffer.
that was
It's-
Right.
the other point that we had been making, and we stressed to this board that there's a ridge right here. So
Right.
this goes, it goes like this. We're on the we're not on the, you know, nothing
we're
drains
inside of
directly
it.
into the wetland. Everything has to go this way. And then it circles around, it gets back in the wetland. So the way it's laid out, it has to go through the rain
So the,
garden.
so the whole driveway is pervious anyway?
Yeah.
There's a little bit of distinction with that gravel is no longer considered pervious material by the state and New York City DEP.
Because?
Because it
They say it's not.
compacts, and I mean, everybody thinks it's permeable, but it really, over time, it compacts and it really doesn't drain. And so, in terms of the stormwater manual, they no
I
longer
had a gravel
consider-
driveway for 10 years,
I know.
it always drained pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it's still better than, you know, a paved surface,
Right.
but it
we use for
does not
drainage,
have the same
gravel.
runoff numbers that, you know, a grassed, you know, situation.
So you
would.
still need to put a drain in it?
You still need to provide drainage on it.
Okay, but
Right,
it would
but it's
go
still
through
better,
everything.
but it's still less,
It's still better
it's still
than
less of a
asphalt, yeah.
disturbance.
It's less of a disturbance, it's a better alternative.
It's better than disturbed clay soil.
Right,
You know, and if it's done right, for instance, if you go in there where you're putting the driveway, and of course you're gonna take off the topsoil, but if you took out about 8 inches or 10 inches of the subsoil, and you layered that with heavier rock, coarser rock, and you put a fabric on that, and then you put your smaller rock, that would go a long way to help these things drain, because that would act as a place for the water to go. And it would make the driveway a lot stronger too. So, you know, that's, you know, and gravel is not that expensive, there's gonna be a machine there anyway. That would be a good way to, you know, you basically have a beefed up driveway section.
It's
Or
already
you
gonna be
wanna get
compacted and built-
the
built in the
fines
house.
to be prevented from infiltrating into the interstices.
So we could do that with the fabric.
Yeah.
And, you know, we can go with like a 3-inch diameter crushed stone, which, you know, there's gonna be, it looks like 40% void space in that.
Yeah,
And then you put that fabric over the top, and then you layer that up with maybe like a 3/4 inch layer of stone, and then you go 3/8 on top of that. And you have this graded base where the fines stay up on top and everything drains down.
you're talking 2 fabric layers?
I would just do one, but I would do one because I think if you do two, when the tires push the 3/8 inch, they're gonna push it and you're gonna see it. So I would keep the fabric between the 3/4 and the 3 inch, because the tires aren't gonna move the 3/4. But you know, I mean, for the few extra dollars for the gravel and the beefed up section, I think the owners would much rather have a driveway for obvious reasons.
Yeah, I don't
Oh,
think-
yeah.
It's gonna get disturbed anyway, building the house. It's like it's a
I mean, I
retarded argument.
Well, you're gonna have to
I
bring
like the
equipment.
fact,
Yeah, it's a
I
nonsensical
like the fact that
discussion.
they've been able to get the 80 feet again.
Right.
You know, and then I think it would make sense to have the driveway be on the northern side, you know, of the cottage.
Well, I think that's where the owners would like it
Yeah.
too.
Right,
That's
and
where they would
it
like
looks
it.
like it takes up less space.
Well,
It's
yeah,
less-
And
it's
it's
less
kind of nestled,
disturbance.
it's kind of nestled in there, if you think about it, it's kind of nestled in there, and it's a little
Right.
bit closer to the main house
It's a
too.
shorter distance to the road, looks
Yeah.
like,
And
right?
there's still the berm between the driveway and the wetland, so
Oh,
it's
yeah,
gonna
this-
drain
this-
through
this
the
comes
rain
right
garden.
up.
Yeah.
The only thing is, you know, we would have to rely on the driveway to kind of almost create kind of like an infiltration system, doing that graded base with, you know, because I don't think
You're not
Alan's.
gonna get the water
Well,
down to the rain garden from
Well,
there.
actually, if we come in here
if you did
and we
some-
put a swale like this, we may be able to get some of it to travel into the rain
Or what
garden.
if you did an infiltration trench all the way through to the other side?
Well, we're gonna have a problem with Bob Cioli, because he's gonna tell us that we can't have any drainage pipe, there's the septic right there, and he's gonna say
You
25
could
feet.
have 20 feet, yeah.
You can't
Right.
have pipe, whether it's closed or not, you can't have it, so there's no way to put a drain in and get it over there. You know, unless we go blast out the rock and go around the house, that's not
It's
practical.
crazy.
And we can't pump it, or we'll be back to 50 North Place. So, you know, I mean, this was really, I mean, to the owner's credit, I thought this was a great idea, Maricat.
So I think what the planning board was looking for is, you know, your board to kind of weigh in on, you know, what their concerns were and, you know, to comment whether you felt some of these alternatives were good solutions on that. I mean, if you like, I can draft a memo, you know, that discusses this and, you know, indicates that our preference is to have the shorter driveway and, you know,
And put it over on the
80
north
feet, put
side
it on the
and-
north
Yeah.
side and
Right,
that.
and relocate the house so that we get the 80 feet back.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then we can, you know, send it on to the planning board and see what
it's
they
a
think.
good idea.
you know.
No, it just made sense, you know, we've been struggling with this project for quite a while, and that specific indentation actually that shows the wetland was basically, it happened when we had the wetland inspector,
Paul Jennings.
yeah, Paul Jennings, drawing the borderline of the wetland. There was a pile of wood and stumps and branches that was accumulated. Basically, it was just a dump yard section of the property where the previous owner was depositing all those, you know, stumps over the years. So basically, this guy never had even access to that area, so he stuck the flag somewhere, you know, 15, 20 feet away.
Wherever he could reach.
Exactly, and that's what you see, that indentation,
That's
and
what-
that creates that, you know,
and-
issue
and, you know,
of
now that
15,
Merrick-
20 feet.
Now that Merrick says that, it makes sense because it climbs 2 feet, and you know that the wetland doesn't climb 2 feet in that area.
So now basically after the spring cleaning of that area, out of all these stumps and debris, this line actually goes the other way. So we would get another 20 feet if this is there.
So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put together a draft memo, forward it to you guys to review, and then once you're comfortable with it, we'll submit it to the planning board.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then-
Thank you, that was very helpful.
Just I'm curious, with the mitigation and the planting, can you maximize the use of native plants?
Yeah,
It's all-
all of that are already active.
Victoria, it's probably 99%.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, we'll put the comparative together, and, you know, I'm sure that once we get this put together and we go to the planning board, they're probably gonna ask you guys to bless it. You're probably gonna get another shot at it, so. But that would be very helpful if we could get some positive movement on this, because the owners have been at this for a very long time.
Sounds like it, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck. Thanks, we need it.
Under pending applications, we've got New York City DEP at Hidden Hollow. I've requested a 1-year extension on the wetland permit. And nothing's changed, there's no changes to the plan and nothing's changed on site. You know, so my recommendation would be that we grant another.
Thank you, Jerry.
Good night, bye-bye.
Is that we grant another 1-year extension, and they're scheduled based on the information they've submitted, as they indicated they had sent out for bids in November of 2017, and they anticipate, you know, that construction would start mid-2018, so.
You need to re-notify the neighbors?
The way traditionally it's been done with seeker, and that is they're only notified in the beginning. They're not re-noticed on that because it's still considered a pending application.
They should just re-notice.
Because
We
now
could,
they're gonna
we
have to
could
do
certainly,
I think
Yeah,
because
they're
there was
just
this
courtesy.
long
It's been so
period.
long.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we could certainly put that as a condition of
Yeah, I
the
think
renewal,
it's
is that they,
yeah, I
So
think
they
that,
re-notice everybody,
that
right?
would be a good
I
idea.
mean, you may have new neighbors that have
Who
moved in since
weren't
then.
there,
Right.
the original one, yeah.
so what I can do is I'll put that a condition of the 1-year extension, is that they resend the public notification and provide documentation to us
Yep.
that it's been done.
When the notice is provided, what are the people receiving it have the option to do, ask questions or?
It's
Nothing.
Nothing.
Just
It's
pure-
just,
pure
Just so they're
Just,
aware.
to
that-
say that
just so that they're not
happen.
surprised.
Yeah, Taco
Yeah.
doesn't show up on Tuesday.
Right.
Right.
Just so they don't call Steve and say, look at what those people are doing.
I mean, there's still a few items, you know, that are conditions of our original permit, is they,
Yeah.
at the time, they wanted to structure their bid to have the contractor be responsible for the tree replacement, you know, and the number of trees that would be removed. You know, so that information will still be forthcoming as that was part of the condition of our permit. You know, and then they would do erosion controls, and there'd be a fill and grading permit they have to do from the town, you know, before they can start, and, you know, a few other engineering details, so.
Yeah, well, we
So
walked that pretty
there's a lot of
carefully.
checks and balances that
Yeah.
have to occur before And the one good thing is with the bigger outfits like that is they usually have a full team of inspectors and, you know, I mean, those jobs are usually done, you know, according to plan exactly and stuff, so.
How many trees would you say?
I think there was, if I remember right, I wanna say there was about 11 trees in total in the area, work area.
I remember there was one significant one.
Yeah, there was, it was like, and since then, that's really declined
Oh, it
considerably.
has? Okay.
Um,
Because it looked in good shape when we had the site visit. It's really a shame that they were gonna lose it.
Yeah, but, yeah, they will have to replace, which they're prepared to do, you know, on that.
Okay.
Do you guys wanna see any of those details when they come in with it, or?
As long as you're good with them, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, the other planning board referral was Lamini on Sorrel Street. And, I got a couple of dates I wanted to check with you. The planning board had thought Saturday morning would work for them, and,
Which Saturday
and I've got, February 3rd, 10th, or March 3rd or 10th.
February 3rd or 10th?
Any of those are good for me so far.
February 10th is not so good for me.
The other ones would be okay.
What were the options again? I'm sorry.
The others are okay.
The 3rd and the 10th of
Yeah,
both
based on-
February and March.
Yeah, based on the applicant's availability.
What
those are the
time
dates they came
do
up.
they?
Probably would do 9 AM.
Okay, then,
on
yeah.
that,
I can only do the 3rd, I can't do
the
the 3rd.
3rd.
The big climate, Bedford 2020 is doing a big climate change event. I just wanna double check the date. It's an all day.
So you said November, or February 3rd does not work?
February 3rd does work.
Works, and John, you think you're okay?
Yes.
And Bill, you probably won't be,
Yeah,
that's close to
I'm gonna
your
be in a
parking.
panic by then.
You certainly,
When's the tag sale?
Well, we didn't have a tag sale, we had an online auction.
Oh, how'd that go?
And we got about 3/4 of the stuff that we listed to disappear.
okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
That's great.
There's an outfit over in Connecticut that runs a setup like that. They come down and they take pictures and they organize it into bid lots, and they put it up on the web, and people bid on it. And they come all at once and
pick up their
everything
stuff?
up. Well, staggered,
Right.
but yeah.
If we go out further, does March 17th work or 24th? Yeah, the applicant asked me if we give them a couple of dates.
What was the other date?
That would be March 17th or 24th.
I can't do March 17th.
I feel like it's March 24th, when, and I'm trying to think, when is the school vacation?
It might be that week, usually it's around the 3rd week in March, yeah.
Well, it depends on when the holidays come in, yeah.
Was the other date you were pretty sure of was the 3rd of February? That was the date that worked for a lot of folks?
Well, that works for these three of them.
I know I'm secondary with this, but I definitely can't do the February 3rd. Just out of-
No, you're tertiary this
I
time.
know exactly.
Because the planning board is
The fourth
primary.
level.
We're only secondary.
Another question is, you know, that we were just discussing among staff is, you know, our understanding of the way the code works is the wetlands, you know, permit, you know, would be the ERB. And the steep slope disturbance, because it exceeded the thresholds as by the planning board, would be involved. In terms of coordination, would it make sense to one thought was to give the planning board approval for everything and have the ERB be advisory, or just keep it separate. And the only reason the applicant's attorney had asked me to bring it up just because they thought it might streamline.
I don't understand the question, I'm sorry.
The
Do we wanna
question
give
was-
up, do we wanna give up jurisdiction?
On which applicant, this?
On the-
this Lamini?
Right. on the-
Since planning board's involved anyway, do we
And
want?
since they've gotta do the steep slopes anyway.
Right.
As opposed to coordinating a meeting
Right.
with both.
Right.
Well, doesn't it depend on what the issues are?
Well, I mean, both issues are very paramount. I mean, there was disturbance within the buffer and the actual wetland, plus the steep slope disturbance overlaps. I mean, it's included in the buffer and outside of it as well. So I mean, there's, both permits are required, for the disturbance. The question is what, the applicant's attorney had asked whether, if that would streamline, from their perspective, they felt having to deal with just one board versus two.
It's obviously
Yeah.
attractive from their point of view.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, my recommendation is that because you were involved heavily in the initial approval of quite a bit of mitigation on site, to me it would make sense that you continue, because you're familiar with the property, you know what, we made them go through to minimize the impact previously. I mean, they pulled the whole pool
Well,
outside of
it's-
the buffer, based on your recommendations and.
Right.
So it's a little more complicated.
I mean, I'd like to stay involved only because we started exploring the questions of penalties. And, what the appropriate remedy, administrative remedy, might be. And I'd like to stay involved in those conversations, which we started with, initial conversations with town council.
Oh, right,
About
right,
it.
right, right.
And
This was that one.
yeah. And whether it anything ends up coming to fruition or being imposed, in this matter, it's an interesting area that I think we should keep exploring,
Okay.
come to some kind of position on.
Well, so the ERB thinking would remain a focal point,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. You guys comfortable with that? Okay. One thought I had is, what about the Sundays, if we did like February 4th or 11th, just to give them another date?
Bill, best of luck to you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.
Carry on.
Yes, sir.
February 4th is good with me, and the 11th is not.
Okay. How about anybody else, 4th, okay, you think, John?
Yeah. Yeah, the only time I've got blocked out is later in the month.
Ivan, you can
Yeah,
do
I
4th?
can do. Or the 11th.
How about March 4th? Just do-
Yes.
I'm not,
yeah, okay.
the 3rd and 4th of March, no good.
Okay. And then the only other one would be the 11th, that's it.
Of March?
Yeah,
That's no good for me.
okay, okay.
But it's
So the options are that weekend, 3rd or 4th.
daylight saving time, March 11th.
We're trying
Is
for
it?
3rd or 4th, I mean,
That
if
quick? Oh, boy.
March 11th.
we get a lot of snow between now and then, it may not make sense to visit.
Yeah, I'm surprised that they wanted to do it so early,
Well,
actually.
Also St. Patrick's Day.
that's push from the applicant,
Ah.
Oh, okay.
wanting to get the
That's-
boards out there.
I'm sorry, that's the 17th.
That's
But-
that's
but
the next
Planning
Saturday.
board said too, there was a lot of snow,
It doesn't make sense.
yeah.
Right.
Alright, so I'll just give them back those dates, the 3rd and 4th are the only time available for, and then otherwise we're looking into, looks like probably March or April, so.
Or an afternoon
Well,
day.
the end of March is Passover, Easter, so that's probably the week, that last week in March would be when the break, school break would be.
What's the applicant in a hurry about?
I think they're just getting pressure from the client probably to get this resolved, you know, even, that's my
Go on
hunch.
standby for anything?
Yeah. Okay, so I'll pass that on, you know, and then, I'll send it, you know, an email once we hear back from planning board as well, and their availability.
Okay.
Alright, our last item is the basketball court and parking and playground at town hall.
So what is this, Jeremy's on his way?
He's on his way.
Okay.
Do you wanna wait or just, I mean, there's. you
Are there
guys-
things that we can discuss in advance, or would it,
Yeah, I
or
think
would it be
so.
more
I mean-
efficient to wait, whatever?
Well, I mean, I sent all of you a copy of the alternate plan, you know, and.
Somehow it made its way out.
Isn't that amazing?
What's that?
Somehow it's made its way out of
Off the
out
head.
of the,
Completely out of that area,
the basketball court.
Oh,
exciting.
Yeah,
well,
so,
but this was,
so the town administrator had asked me to.
take a look at the dates on
Have you
these
guys take a
drawings,
look
though.
at it?
Yeah, they
Did you
have,
notice?
yes.
Yeah, of course. Well, this is why, this is the reason that Jill
Copy to guys?
came up with
This
that
is-
great idea. Remember when it was like, at our meeting in November, when it was like, she was tracing like an envelope, it was, she knew
Yeah.
Dim?
Yeah,
That's efficiency, right?
yes,
Have it,
You know, so, you know, a couple of things, I mean, I looked at it also, and the thing I like about it is it preserves, you know, the natural wooded buffer,
Right.
and it's an adaptive reuse of an existing parking lot, you know, and it also ends up creating 3 new parking spaces with the improvements in the front.
Wait a minute, this is actually more parking than?
It's actually, yeah, it actually ends up with, that's with the new parking going in the front of the building.
Okay, but that was
Well, but
happening
the
anyway.
new parking is
Well,
on both.
yeah, but the biggest impact was because they were losing spaces from the Metro North, you know, or the town-owned, you know, train parking lot. You know, cause and taking down the hill, you know, the combination of where they placed it, they lost spaces that
Right.
they were needing to make up.
so you wanna make
So,
everybody crazy? If this is the entrance into the field, right?
Right.
So everybody who walks there, kids and adults, have to walk down the middle of a parking lot.
I actually.
Well, that's one of the things
Well,
that Jeremy and I had been talking about.
Yeah, and I talked
Shift
with
it out
the
into a
town
sidewalk.
administrator is, you know, 'cause I've looked at this actually this week, and you know, there's a sidewalk that goes on this side, and I think there's enough space that we could create a walking path in the grassed area, you know, that's behind the existing
Or
parking.
at least to here, right, to
Yeah.
there, so that
Yeah, so that they could then
Oh,
gain
right.
access, yeah, so I think that's a critical
with,
component,
with a
'cause
with a crossing,
some kind of crossing there, right.
right, so that,
Those are
So
literally
in-
all
you mean
spaces
in-
right outside of the court.
instead of back here, moving it,
so to get to the pathway to get to the field,
yeah.
Is this
from this
existing?
parking area, just have a sidewalk
Yes,
follow
that's the
along
walkway over to the field, that's the culvert bridge.
to get people from
It's a culvert underneath.
this area to go along here to get
And
to
then you
here.
can get over there,
Right,
yeah,
just to get them out of the parking lot.
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah, so.
Is there room for a walkway there?
Yeah, and
why
I,
not?
you know, I'm not sure,
I'm sure you can
Yeah.
cut out
you know, I mean, I
90
think
feet.
there's enough space to fit it in there. And then I like your idea of the crosswalk, you know,
Yeah.
coming in.
Do a drop, you know, even
Right
if you
in
did
here?
a drop curve here and a drop curve here for ADA,
Mm-hmm.
and you could get people across.
Did you have a chance to
Yeah.
check out that
Yeah.
building?
Yeah, I looked at it again, and I also talked to the town administrator, and what Bill is referring to is there's a police building, you know, right over here on the, you know, next to the parking lot, a big building they constructed about 3 years ago.
That little
Yeah.
garage.
Like the
It's
shed?
a
Seems to be a
garage.
Yeah.
storage building kind
Yeah,
of
right,
thing.
right.
Primarily
Yeah.
storage, but they're reluctant to have that, it plays a critical role, I guess, for the police, so they're really not willing to consider relocating that, cause they don't have any place to relocate it.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
there's that space just behind that that's wasted
That corner that we were
grassy
walking
area.
around in the snow.
Well,
It
there's
can't
a
be
bit-
used for anything
Well,
else.
there's a little bit of grassy area and then there's a little depressional wetland on the other side of that. You know, that's next to the, access.
Oh,
road.
next to the access road, yeah,
Yeah,
but you don't have to go that far.
yeah, but they, I mean, it, you know, we can.
'Cause I wonder
we
how
can
many-
discuss with them, but.
What's your suggestion though, to move it
Yeah,
back so that you can create more
So you can
parking?
gain some additional parking spaces. Cause
Oh,
that was an express need.
I mean, not to put the basketball court there, just put.
No,
Right, no.
No, to get
Yeah.
more parking.
I don't know if it would be cost effective, cause I think, you know, it's a stick building, so they would have to probably dismantle it and then create a whole new slab to, you know, put it back.
Yeah,
I
but
mean, it'd
that's
basically be
essentially a
redoing it.
capital investment in additional parking around town hall.
Yeah,
So there's value to that,
okay, so it's not.
not for the
connected with-
basketball court, no.
Okay, so just for parking, so
Yeah.
we could suggest that as a recommendation, see
Yeah,
what they wanna do for increasing parking. And that-
Can I ask, do they have any like seating or anything around this court? It's like so, abuts the parking spaces so closely.
Well, I mean, the
Fenced, I imagine.
Well, that's, the
This whole
fence
thing
is
is-
shown.
the whole thing
Fence
is
and what, the
fenced.
blue area, what is that
That's,
gonna be?
that's a, kind of a walkway around the court itself, I mean, it's fenced in, and then they have, I think it's 6 feet, these are site requirements for, you know, basketball court design.
Right, for
Yeah,
standard.
they're just standard things, and
So there one fence or two fences?
there's one
One
fence around the
fence,
perimeter.
okay.
Yeah.
But then you could
So this
do
is
other things with the added
Basketball
space.
court with 10-foot clear around all sides, provide additional basketball hoop outside of fence for additional recreation play area.
And they do have a sidewalk shown, you know, on this side of it, if you look at,
Right.
you know, the plan.
Right, there's a 7-foot wide
Yeah,
sidewalk
and then
beyond
if
the
we do
10.
a
They can walk
crosswalk
from there
connect.
to the playground.
Yeah, and it's 10 feet around the basketball court, you know, to-
Right.
They're not showing the gates to get in, I'm
No.
assuming there's multiple,
yeah, there's several
a-
gates.
There's no way in as it happens
yeah,
there.
you have to climb the fence.
Yeah, but the reason the parking spaces are, you know, they're trying to maximize every square inch to get, you know,
It looks like
Is
as
this
much
gonna be lit?
parking as feasible.
I'm sure.
Yes, they're talking
Yeah,
about lighting.
Yeah.
light it.
yeah,
Okay.
cause they wanna be able to use it in the evening.
Will they be required to turn the lights off though, so they're not overnight? Just-
Yeah, they.
But we had the same issue
like the
with
Like the rec field, the rec field is
baseball
Right,
courts.
right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there really aren't houses
It's
right
all,
in
Thinking
this
for
immediate
wildlife,
area.
It's all in-
for
it's all
like
in time.
migration season.
yeah, it's all in timers and stuff.
They
Well,
are, so
there,
they do
there
the
was a
nighttime, it's dark.
time when they weren't turned off.
Well,
Cause somebody wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, my understanding it's all on automatic timers.
Yeah.
It is
My
not,
understanding.
I complained about that.
Yeah,
Was it responded at?
And then they said, oh, well, yeah, we could do something about that.
Okay, well,
And they-
that's good.
Yeah.
And they're still losing, just quickly, still losing 4 trees
Yeah, but
minimum?
but the 4 trees, I noticed, that's the pink shading, right?
Ah,
Oh,
So
they're
3 of those
parking lot
trees are
trees.
in the front
Yeah.
of town hall that
Yeah.
they're gonna
oh,
lose.
interesting.
yeah, and the other
It's
one
really
is.
There's only one, there's only
The other one
one,
is over here.
right.
Do we know what kind of tree that is? Does it have any significant value in any way?
No, this was an ornamental tree that was planted when they did the parking lot. And, you know, one of the discussion items that came up from Jeremy, you know, he was interested in exploring to have a path that would go around the playground. But the only question I'm not sure about is where does it go to? You know, to allow kids to walk, you know, from the ball field area.
Right, well, he and I had been talking about that too, and maybe put another crossing.
But
You
the
really
question I
wanna-
had is where do they go from?
Where are you
People
gonna
though in
go?
the middle of a parking lot?
Well, but if this is all kept as parking, no.
Yeah, it is.
No, the thought was that if this was not done as parking, that if this became a green area,
That
then
makes
you can,
sense.
then you could connect, you could put
Yes.
another crossing so that people on the baseball field wouldn't have to walk all the way back down here. You know, if you're over at the gazebo or you're playing football or something, you wanna come over, the parents wanna come over to the playground, they can come this way. But it doesn't, you're right, it doesn't make sense if you're gonna leave this as parking.
And there's no way to get, cause this is parking, this is the Metro North parking and this is
Right,
this
exactly.
parking and there's
Right.
no way to cut that corner, what is that?
Well, we may be able to do something in there, by.
But whatever, you're gonna have to leave,
It's gonna be narrow, it probably
you'd have
won't
to
meet
lose-
any standards.
and
It'd
you'd have to
just
lose a
be-
couple of spaces.
Well, I'm
Well,
not
what's
sure,
this,
John, there
what's
might
this
be enough
box right
space.
here, you see
Yeah.
that in the corner?
Yeah.
That
It
looks
might-
like it's wasted
Because they
space?
can't,
Dead
yeah,
You mean over here?
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
They'll put a surf
Folks
fan or
can't get
something.
too,
We
when
could take
you're at
a,
right angles,
Yeah,
can't get
take a
too
look
close.
at it, the other side of the guide rail that's here. There may be enough space that we could continue the trail, path down here, and then maybe they could use this piece.
Oh, the one
Yeah,
from,
coming this way.
from the bridge all the way
But
in.
then what you do
Just
once you
and
get to
go
the.
right
Right.
here.
Right, cause this is all,
Right
because this,
there,
and this is
then you're in the
sloped,
playground.
this isn't flat, remember?
Yeah, so it's kind of a path to nowhere in
Exactly,
some ways.
right.
Yeah.
Aren't they all?
Such as existential.
Emergency egress though, I could see putting a post and a bar across, where if you needed to get an emergency vehicle either through or through, for whatever reason,
Right,
at least,
which has always kind of been there,
yeah.
you know?
It's
I mean, in
gonna
a real emergency, you could always drive straight through there.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, right down at the end there.
But
Right.
put a removable bollard or a horizontal, cause if you needed to pull a van, a bus, a fire, just if you needed, you could pull it in there.
Yeah.
An ambulance, I mean, I hate to say it, but right.
Yeah, well, an ambulance will get through easily, but you're gonna have a tough time getting,
Anything bigger.
right.
One of the
Here's your
questions came up, with putting a trail, behind the playground. It's a little hard to see on the plan, but this is all wetland behind, the existing playground.
Oh, down in there, yeah.
Hey, Jeremy.
I'm quadrupling everybody's salary. Thank you. How you feeling?
Doing much better, thanks.
Sorry, I was at another meeting.
No worries.
Thank you.
Where we should have been.
I was here early hoping to get in, but I saw that things were going slow, so.
They were.
Jeremy, what we've been discussing is the alternative plan, which I get in a sense everybody's comfortable with,
Okay,
for the location of the basketball court,
the alternative plan being,
What you're looking at.
what you're looking at here.
Yeah,
FS,
okay,
What this
FS1.
FS1, what this plan is it preserves the entire natural wooded slope.
so a couple of questions and issues. So I spoke with Bob Cioli just actually today, and I said, can you refresh my recollection about your concerns about the accessibility and usability of parking behind here? And, sorry, behind the basketball court,
This
towards the
way.
corner.
What's being called maintenance parking area, 9 spaces.
Right, so without quoting him by any stretch, his concern was both safety and usability and accessibility and the potential of losing those spots. So I don't know, and I'm just thinking out loud now, and I'm certainly by no means an engineer or whatever profession one would be to examine the topography and place a basketball court among many. For that matter, could this basketball court be pushed back even further on the blacktop to, in this area, so that if it's not usable, why waste all that space? Right?
you mean, so what you're saying is.
I'm just thinking aloud.
No,
Push it-
but
push
so
it this
you,
way, yeah.
what you're saying is, assuming that what's shown here as parking is really not feasible to use as parking.
Right,
well,
if
why?
that's true,
But why?
I think,
it's the wrong way.
I think the issue or concern was, it's a pretty narrow space from the corner of the basketball court to
this up.
where this is over here.
Well-
So turning around and moving cars is dangerous there, there's-
But look at this from the other point of view. Most of the
This is already
parking
dead space, right?
around town hall
Hey, there's a
is
fire hydrant.
relatively
That's a
short
dead
term.
space.
People are in and out.
So if anything, kill this space.
This would be for essentially employees
And then you have no issue.
who are spending
Like,
I guess one could say, look, we're employee parking
so
only.
there's not a lot of in and out
I
movement.
mean, that's an argument, employee parking only.
Well,
I'm just thinking,
Well, okay, is
Dave,
that a,
Dave,
it's
who
all-
is an engineer,
oh, okay,
came up
okay,
with,
okay.
I think, a viable solution that
So,
eliminates
so
that
the question
concern.
that you asked is, the passability of the vehicle between the corner of that fence post and a bollard that you'd wanna put on either side, so it hits the bollard, not the
Right.
fence, right? So you have one dead space already in front of the hydrant.
Right, that's there now, that X.
So you kill a second space here, and then you have no issue for any vehicle, emergency vehicle included, to get through. So in
So
other
we're
words,
kill, we're killing,
You're killing the
you
parallel
kill one,
parking.
maintenance parallel parking area, 3
Oh,
spaces.
over here.
no,
Right.
no, one space.
Well, I'm just saying that's what it says on this,
Right.
3 spaces. but-
So there could be just one more space to kill, and then we talked about before, over here, making this some type of gate, or just a bar in the Metro North parking, so that in the future, if the town wanted to,
Way down in the corner.
right.
Right,
You
here,
know
so
that-
that this parking lot
If
can
the
connect
town
to
wants-
That
that
area
one
that
for
always
emergency
looked like
access.
it was kind of open,
Right, I know.
between the two lots.
So if the town
If
wanted
you
to
floored it, you
place
could do it.
a large vehicle, a trailer, one of those CERT van, whatever it is, if, for whatever reason, this would become a choke point, you could always get in and out through here,
Right. Great idea.
right? But a quick check with the traffic engineer is gonna tell you that that lane distance and the bollard, just put 2 bollards in the corner, so the corner of the fence doesn't get hit. The worst case, you take one more space out and you have more than enough room to get around.
Alright, great, super. I'll take yours.
But a quick traffic engineer can lay out the turning radius, but I don't see that as a problem at all.
Works, if it's
Yeah.
good for the goose, good for the gander, works.
The other thing you could think of was if you wanted to make that a real opening, you could do the traffic circulation such that this was the way you got out of that parking lot.
That's interesting.
Then you don't have to worry
So,
about coming back out.
Oh,
It's one way and you'd have to come, that's not a bad idea,
Yeah.
Mr. Rosenblum.
And I'm not an engineer.
Or a doctor.
Yeah, then it'll deter people from even
No,
coming
I
in
just
there.
play a
just
lawyer.
plays on TV.
It just has high billable hours, but,
The only issue
You just gotta
with,
see the parking space on the
with
other
the issue on
side.
that
Right.
side, they may lose 1 or 2 spaces.
will.
Right. But some of
But that
that,
may-
but some of that, remember when we were
Oh,
out
we
there?
walked that.
Right, some
Yeah.
of that is cross-hatched and dead
Yes.
anyway because of the angles.
But you would lose probably a space or 2 if you're gonna make it the primary.
The primary
That's a tweak
exit.
that
Right.
you guys can take a look
Right.
at either way.
Right.
Well, now coming back to that suggestion I made earlier about the other end. If we're gonna lose 1 or 2 spaces over here, we could make it up
Right.
by moving that building into that grassy area down at the
That's
other
that
end.
temporary building, you mean?
Right,
Like,
you also, but Jeremy, going back to your initial question,
About sliding it?
yeah, I mean, we were approaching all our conversations tonight on the assumption that somebody had made a determination that this was a viable
Well,
and desirable
Yes.
area to leave as parking, but, I mean,
so when we got the different potential projects, or pardon me, designs, there was only 2 of them initially. I mean, we
Right.
tweaked a little bit, and I'd never questioned why it's not shifted down, I never asked that question, I don't know.
right,
I mean, it's certainly something to bring up and I'll ask.
You mean the one that was labeled FS2?
There's FS2 is different, FS2 is the one that goes into the hill.
yeah, FS2 is the
Yeah.
one that takes the hill.
Yeah, that was
No,
not-
what I'm saying to you is, no one ever asked, we just got 2 designs, no one ever asked, well, why is it here and not pushed further towards the back end of the parking lot?
Right.
No one asked that question.
Right.
Other than maybe, I'd have to go out and look and visualize it, it's just,
I don't think you gain as many spaces. You have more spaces here and here.
Yeah,
Or if
because
you
you
move
got-
it,
there must be.
Then you'll lose,
Yeah.
right,
it kills more
It
spaces.
feels
You
more
think
like
it
a,
does? Because the only spaces that you lose by shifting it this way, it looks to me like you could get to about this point, so you'll lose these 5, well, you'll
One,
lose,
two,
you lose the entire
four,
area.
You probably gain 3 on this side and lose
You
1,
gain
2,
5,
3, 4,
you
5,
gain
6.
5 here, and then at least the same here, so you gain 10 to get rid of 9.
So if you moved it, if you move 1, 2 spaces here,
I think you can go farther.
well, I'm just saying, if you,
Let's
you
assume you
still
go
might,
up.
you still might have a way to get through.
Oh, I'm
If you move-
saying give up on this entire
Oh,
corner. Slide this as far as it can go.
well, that's what I
I'm
was
saying,
saying,
I'm
slide
moving
as far
over
as
3,
it
so if you
goes.
picked up 3,
width is-
you almost hit here,
But then
gain
you lose
3,
basically-
and you lose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
right.
You gain 3 but lose 7.
Well, first of all, I think you can gain more than 3 from the way I'm seeing it. And even still, you gain it on both sides here, you gain it here and then you gain another row here. Right? And then maybe even here, you know, I don't know. I think someone would have to lay it out, but I think it's worth looking at.
What
You know
was,
better, you see this much more clearly than I do.
on the email, the second alternative
56, because you just put them over here,
lost
And then you'd also
more
get them here,
than this does.
right?
right, and then you'd get more here too.
The question is if,
The,
can you pick up these?
it was a
and
net
knock it out?
loss.
Yeah, of course, because you would go, you'd keep,
I'm not sure you're gonna gain that
This and
much.
then you get this
I mean,
here,
to me,
whatever
it's
you
Yeah.
lose here, you
like
gain
wash
here,
almost.
but you also get it over
Yeah.
here, because
Because
you
you
get
push
another
it
row
down,
of
all you're
parking.
gaining is on this side.
but I assume
Yeah,
that
yeah, I'm
ERB
not
has
sure
no,
you-
it doesn't
I don't
take
know if
care of
you
one
have
way or
enough-
another, that's.
We don't care, we know parking was a concern for you
I
guys.
just don't know if you have enough width to get
Right.
the two
But I think that it,
loaded,
Yeah.
on both
we,
sides, like.
any of those
And you
solutions.
lose that option down here.
I mean, the interesting thing about, again, from an architectural design perspective, if you move it that way, then you can actually maybe do some plantings there and create kind of like a nice, safer, away from the moving traffic.
Right, then the
No.
basketball court is not fronted on 3 sides by parking.
Surrounded by-
Right.
You know, it's nestled into a
I'll bring that up.
Park.
I think-
Right, and then if you wanted to do something that we had talked about,
where
you
the
know, maybe-
playground connects.
a new crossing over here.
Yeah, I think that's an absolute must, because it becomes too circuitous and more of a pain in the neck, it's A to B to C to D, as opposed to just right over into there.
Of course, the nice thing about the court being here is it is so close to the playground.
It's still, you know, something
Well,
though, if this is,
are you talking
yeah, this
about
would-
you
the
maintain
same-
the hill,
This would,
and it's green, it's still.
it'll still be close,
Yeah.
right.
And it's accessible by
Yeah, but
green space.
why should they be close together? You're not talking the same clientele.
Yes and no, you know, what I mean by that is, yes, it's different clientele, but mom or dad is on the basketball court, or mom and dad is with the
with-
little ones.
with the big
Or
sister
big brothers on
and-
the
yeah.
Well,
basketball
it
court, big
depends on
sisters
the
on the
age
basketball,
spread.
right, so, because this
Yeah.
playground is not for big brother, big sister, it's for little brother, little sister.
Yeah.
And what is the fence made of? I'm curious. 'Cause I'm just looking at how little buffer there is even around the court. What is the fence,
I
do you
don't
know?
know, I don't
It's
know.
usually what they do is it's a black vinyl chain link coated fence.
Is there a way even there to do some plantings around there to make it more
It's-
part
Make
of?
it a living fence.
It's all,
No,
it's
I don't mean,
all-
I mean like you could have,
Those cool,
Yeah,
yeah.
the problem is it's all asphalt, you know,
There's
it's,
nothing
Yeah.
the
planted.
growing
Right.
medium is not
Well,
gonna work.
You know, that was the question that I did wanna raise. Asphalt leaches. Certainly
Sure,
initially
near
it
the
does,
water.
yeah. And I'm just wondering if a barrier could be incorporated in the construction of this so that we don't have leaching into the stream.
Does it have to be asphalt, the basketball court?
No, there's different types of
They-
surfaces,
yeah.
I don't know, you know, how much.
They're probably more expensive.
Yeah, they're a lot more expensive, I know that, there's a lot more maintenance required with them as well.
Was the proposal to put a trench drain
Well,
to pitch this thing, so, or
Well,
it's just
one-
like a parking lot and it all drains
well,
in the same place?
one thought that, speaking with the engineer we had is to put everything into a hydrodynamic separator. You know, to pick up all the petrochemicals. You know, and when they do the basketball court, they would have to make sure that it's pitched and drained
So
drains
the-
a certain way to go into that. You know, and that's a chamber in the ground that, you know, will take all the, you know, runoff, you know, and filter that out before it discharges.
Yeah, I think we would,
And I mean, that's a standard thing we require.
we
in a
would
lot
really
of
want
commercial
that
sites.
because
We're pretty close.
you're pretty close to the water.
And then the town
Yeah,
maintains that,
It just has to be, you know, make sure we pitch everything.
Yeah, cross slope to,
Yeah, yeah.
and that the town maintains it, like,
Yeah, the separators are
CF2,
pretty easy to
FS2,
maintain.
have that?
No, we don't have FS2.
No, it's not
We
here.
don't have FS1.
What?
That's all I
You have
have.
S- you have FS2?
Do you have FS2?
Yeah, it
Oh,
was,
right there, it's in front of Steve.
oh, you have a copy of
That's
it?
fine.
Yeah.
Because here's another thing too, like, I asked Bob, because, that's right, I wanted to say, so I asked Bob, my recollection is
Here it is.
I had asked.
Oh,
I had asked,
You
just about the
turned it the other
playground,
way.
I had asked Bob about the angles in the playground, because he had it with the contour of the land, which makes sense in part because you can have potentially higher retaining walls if you are just going straight with no regard to the elevation. But this is straight with no regard to the elevation, so I'm wondering if this is the right playground drawing.
Yeah. No, that.
Because I thought I had seen, the last one I had seen was more following the contour of the land.
No, that's the only plan they've ever done.
No, I'm positive. I've seen another one.
There's been something since then, this is all we've seen on that.
I'm positive. And so let me find out about that. It was the same, this was the same, I think maybe this was different. My other question is something that I brought up to John,
That's cut into here.
and I may have mentioned to Ivan, and I don't know if I said it in front of everyone who was here last time, but an idea
That's
is
why we didn't like that.
that this doesn't include is if you have little kids, like really little kids, like newborns, and you wanna be there with your older little kid, and you want your little newborn to sleep, for example, or, you know, you wanna walk them, there's no ability to do that now, because you're not gonna walk your newborn in a parking lot, and you can only walk back and forth on this path so many times. So, unfortunately, there's not really the ability to, I'm not sure what angle, but on the town hall side, to put a path, because the pitch is just not feasible. So, you know, one thing I would just ask for your consideration, and if it's not something you would approve, a footpath, even if it's elevated, and granted there's financials to that too, it may not be feasible financially, that you could take this path, extend it through here, and then come back up the hill by, you know, where the police have their picnic benches, and circle it back down. So if you are a parent and you wanna be in eyesight and earshot of your child, and you wanna walk another one, or you just wanna walk, have the little one walk, and you know that if he's on his, unfortunately, on their stupid video game things that kids are addicted to these days, and they can walk, and there's a place for them to walk, and they can go here.
Did you say, Steve, that that's the wetlands back there?
Well,
Well, there are wetlands for certain, so that's why I'm asking you,
Behind the playground is wetlands,
Right.
but there's a solid wood fence, I mean,
well, that,
you wouldn't want the walkway behind the fence.
well, the fence could
Because
go,
you
and
can see it.
you could push the fence to the other side, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud, I'm not that creative
I mean,
in
one
that
thought would be to
aspect.
push the fence back and have, you'd almost have to do a boardwalk through there.
Right, that's what it
what I
would be,
was
even if it was just
thinking.
immediately adjacent to it, so that, you know, that would even, so someone could see little Johnny or Joni,
I mean,
who's
that could
6, 7, 8, 9 years old, walking
If the
here, and
budget
mom
was
or
there
dad
for
can
it,
walk
that
it.
could be really nice.
Right. Yeah, but if you have to do it structured, it's gonna be expensive.
Right, cost aside, I'm obviously, if it's prohibitive, cost-wise, it's prohibitive.
in the front.
Well, it's a small run though, so I mean, I don't think the boardwalk would be that expensive, I mean, cause you're gonna do,
Right, it's
you
not
can
that
do
many
like
linear
12-foot
feet.
lengths,
Yeah.
for your,
So it's interesting though,
stringers
because the way
and
it is
stuff.
now, you have a juxtaposition, to call it a preserve is a little bit of maybe excessive, but it is now kind of, utilized habitat adjacent to, human use, right? So once you start putting it sounds beautiful aesthetically, but then suddenly you're turning it into a park in a different way. In other words, now, the wildlife that's there may not wanna use it as much because you're gonna have more human traffic. So it does shift it
It
to
does.
suddenly.
Yeah,
So just it's a consideration.
it becomes dense development in that sense.
Relatively speaking,
Yeah.
my thought, my position, when I say my thought, my position is my thought, not obviously coming here with boxing gloves, is there just, what is lacking in a major way here is not like Gedney or any other park, you have the ability to, where you have the ability to walk around. If you have a small child, because of how dense it is, it's just not, it's not feasible to be
Right.
with your child, and when that little kid is crying his or her brains out and you need them to sleep and they're not feeling well, you just not come, that's certainly a possibility. But things happen spur of the moment, or if someone doesn't wanna play and they wanna walk, where do they go? And
Could you
it's
go the other
nice-
way? Put a crossing, drop curb from here to here, and then do the path both to get to this
Along
gate.
there.
But you're still
And then-
far, my concern, that may be something in addition, I'm talking more for,
While you're
I'm
using
there,
the
like, I have
Line
a
to the
5-year-old,
playground.
if I have a 5-year-old,
Right.
so he
Right,
doesn't wanna
adjacent to
play
the
there, he
playground.
wants to walk around, I know that if I'm sitting on a bench with a sandwich, I know that I can keep my eye on Johnny or Joni on the playground and little Tyke over here. And if I need to, although I hope I don't have a fourth child, I could stroll fourth child around. So it just makes it much more user friendly, and remember, this playground is for that younger child, and it could certainly be the youngest, or it could be the oldest, so you can't say, but it's, you're gonna have young parents and kids here.
So I couldn't see where you drew, David, but over here, it would be less disturbance in this area.
It's
There's
just
empty
crazy,
space.
yeah, well, I am, what I'm saying is, you would come up, you would attach it here, and then come up, and then there's the green up here,
Right,
and
but
you
you're
do that.
you're building
Once
through
you
the
go back there,
trees,
you
a
can't see
human
the playground
pathway.
anyway, so.
I mean,
What's
you're
that?
building,
If it's a
Yeah,
line of
it's,
sight issue,
Oh, you're
it's
sitting
not,
here, no, you could sit here, and you
no,
can
no,
sit up there.
sit there,
Yeah, I mean, you're talking
in other
about
words, this
plan.
area,
Yeah, that's the plan, right.
right, it feels like it's less disturbance because you're taking advantage of whatever green there is there, but not going through the trees.
The pitch though is so difficult here.
Yeah, what are these?
This was the other plans that they come up with. It just had more of the details, not colorized, it's the same plan.
This is what they had given us in November?
Yeah, this just shows the retaining wall that Jeremy was asking about that follows the contour.
Right, as this one has the contour.
Right, okay.
So, I mean, I'm not wedded to that particular spot, I just don't know if it's feasible because of the contour on the
But
other side.
conceptually, Jeremy, what you're saying is if there were a way to incorporate a way for people to walk around and near the playground, that would create additional use opportunities
benches being
rather
proposed
than
here?
just having it be a static destination where you go and you stand on the playground and then you leave the playground.
Yeah,
But an opportunity to kind of,
Put a bench
you know,
over here.
to wind your way through, and what you're saying, Victoria, is that, you know, there's a concern that by creating too much human circulation, that you could compromise the quality of that. So if there was a way to balance those interests, to create some walking space where you can use this and not completely change the character of what it is, you know, there might be
Because it's already such a small space.
It is a small
In other
space,
words,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
such a narrow,
So what's another, I don't know the exact,
Well,
what's another
I
4
thought-
feet?
I thought
I
Jeremy
mean, it
was-
just seemed 4 feet along for 100 feet or whatever it may be.
in
Well,
other
it's
words,
hard,
you
it's
have
hard
this-
for us to see on the plan I'm seeing, cause it's cut just beyond the playground, so I don't really know what, you're talking about an area here that
And you know what,
doesn't
you know where
appear
that,
on-
you know where the structure is for the police department?
Yeah, but I haven't walked around on that
It's
side to really kind
down-
of feel that out.
It kind of
down
goes,
in here.
it goes,
Yeah,
it's kinda like a,
and there's that grassy area.
there's picnic benches.
Right, it's not wooded so much
No, that's
there,
not
it's kind of
It's
open.
open.
Yeah.
So I mean, conceptually, it's something, you know, to think about, I right? I mean,
You're just
Sure.
expanding it in a, you know, in other words, it's already saying, well, we're in the the wetlands are right there. We wanna, you know, it's a slippery slope, literally. I mean, you have, suddenly we wanna do this, okay, but, so now, great, so the basketball court looks great. Personally, for me, I think it's a judgment call for the town to make this, it's so tight, in other words, but we want parking, right? So that's the town's choice. Well, I would rather see more woods around
Sure,
the, you know,
sure,
this
the
would
basketball
park
court.
like, and then people
Right,
could
but
walk
we've got
around
a
with their
parking
kids, they
crunch.
could have places to
Right.
sit and beautifulness.
Well, but
So that
it's-
now then to creep, slippery slope, creepy into this area, now suddenly it's gonna wind up not being a habitat, it's just gonna be some trees
You
around the
can't
path, that's my
shoehorn that
concern.
much into that kind of space.
Right.
Another
I
scenario,
would,
Jeremy,
I would
is you might be
argue
able-
that I'm not scientifically or mathematically saying it, but 4 feet roughly, I'm guessing, 3
Well, by the
feet
time you do a
wide.
boardwalk with it, you're
You
gonna
know,
have to
well-
remove most of these trees.
Yeah, it
Well, if
suddenly
you
shifts
wanna
the whole
maintain
project.
sightlines,
You know, there's a lot more
that's gonna
impact,
be.
and then you'd have to put a wall back up to create the separation
But
from the
instead of,
parking area.
here's my view, instead of deliberating on this specific location, it's the concept. Where else can
What
you
if
do something like
What
that?
if you did in front, the walkway?
I think that's even a better idea, but for the fact that I don't know
Because the
structurally,
benches, the
because
benches could be relocated.
I just don't know how you know, do you.
Well, there's also the-
maintaining, I just don't know the answer to that.
I mean,
How
I
much
think it
level,
could be
how much
relocated.
level area is there?
There's
in
no
front?
level area.
Yeah,
It
it's-
drops
it's
right
just-
off. from the parking down to where the playground is.
So you have to level it, you have to.
Right, you cut and,
So you have to
you
build
cut
that
and
up,
retain.
or-
I mean,
little-
that could be designed, so that you can have a
Yeah.
walkway.
So then instead of going here, you just,
Rectangle there,
instead of
Yeah.
here,
Basically,
instead of
you're
here, you
building a
just
board
come here,
wall.
you come this way.
Yeah.
And then you
Right.
Put on
that
solid
seems-
material,
do
not-
the
Just
asphalt
like,
across
Right.
the
6
street.
to 1, half dozen
And
right.
maybe
go
there
from
you wind up
walkway.
putting in some trees to create more of a nice shaded area for people walking
Yeah,
with their
there's not enough
kids,
space
you know?
really to.
What is,
Whatever.
what is that
It's a
distance?
tiny, yeah.
What is that distance? Is there,
There's a little
there
key
is-
at the bottom, if you look over here, there's a little
One inch.
key.
One
Yeah,
Inch
there's a-
equals 20 feet,
It
so
tells
it's,
you.
so it's
These are
12
reduced-
feet
These are
maybe?
reduced plans.
alright, so there's enough to put a couple, yeah, I mean, as long as the contour and the costs and,
I mean, one
It's
of the
above my
thoughts
pay
is we
grade in
could,
terms of-
we
So
could
that's
ask,
What are the
you know, for an
contours there? This
alternative
is,
layout,
I can't read it.
you know, that explores shifting the building down, you know, see
The
what
court down,
the court down to see what the impact would be on,
the
you know,
parking.
the
and-
parking
yeah.
and, you know, whether that makes a difference, and then explore also putting a path in the front.
Could there be benches
Yes.
there that people could sit on with their babies
Playground.
right
Isn't
under
that
the
concept
trees?
though, or is that
Port
proposed?
is in the
this
parking
is
lot,
existing.
Yeah.
really,
Oh, I see, what's,
wherever
and
they
this
wanna
is
put it.
proposed is the common area.
So the
So
wood's
it's
getting
getting
bigger.
bigger.
We'll put it,
Are these
whatever
shade
makes the most
trees?
sense for the town.
Are these shade trees that you could put a bench for someone to sit with a carriage, a stroller, right underneath, you know, for shade?
Well, the problem is the space in front of the
Well, the
playground.
besides pushing it down creates more space, and you get to then expand this into a little bit of a green space.
Right, no, perfect.
So much the better.
Exactly.
That's
Days
true,
in
because
elementary
that's
school.
another point,
I read
actually,
maps when I went engineering.
But within that
That's a lot of lines,
that's
therefore,
very
that's a steep.
framework.
It's steep, yeah.
Jeremy,
And it's gonna get steeper.
Joe, what's this going to, this discussion, what's this going to do to the timeline?
So,
Cause I know there's a concern.
right, so you know, in the whole scheme of things, as much as I would like to see it happen, it's not about me liking to see it happen. And we also have all this garbage around here, when I say garbage, trucks and fill and blah, blah, blah. So thinking out loud, if that's not moving out anytime soon, then what are you gonna put in this beautiful playground and have trucks going by? I mean, it's gonna be a nightmare anyway, so if that's gonna be the scenario,
Some little kids love seeing the
true, but they also
Yeah.
like
Construction
Dodge and
machinery.
try and, you know, big Mack truck tires, but, so if it's gonna turn out that this property is going to be filled with, you know, it's like the holding cell for everything, then my view personally is, if we have to wait another year, we'll wait another year, right? I mean, it just doesn't seem like you put in shiny new toys, I like to say, amongst the garbage that's potentially damage and just create havoc. But that's just my opinion, I don't think anyone,
Or maybe you're saying, do it in such a way that you leave your option open for later.
meaning, I'm a little confused by that, do what in such a way?
Don't eliminate the option for doing something like that later.
Do something like what?
Well, he's talking about delaying the whole project.
Yeah, but I'm saying, you asked me timeline, and what I'm saying is,
Yeah,
if
alright.
this property is like this in 6 months from now, why am I gonna put in something, you know, why am I? Why
Even
are
the
we
play-
as a
even the
community?
wait till that
Yeah.
phase is
Okay.
done.
It doesn't make
and the next
sense.
Right.
phase.
Even if that means the fall, I'd rather do it over in the fall, who knows, whatever it is, but, so I think that, at this stage, because of what's going on, and seeing it actually happening, it may just behoove us to wait, but.
You know, the other thing that might be good about it?
I'm not speaking on behalf of the town board, I'm
If you
just.
give yourselves that much time, maybe you could also even open it up. Get some community input.
Well, it's
May-
funny, what my wife said to me tonight.
You might have people who have all kinds of,
Like a focus group of
Ideas
families
about-
and
My
residents.
my wife said to me, who for all intents and purposes is the community to me because she's from law. So it doesn't matter what you all say. She said, well, why don't you take the parking behind Pizza Station and the little pocket park there and that temporary parking there and put a playground there, because then I'm gonna go there, get a cup of coffee and walk back and forth and be there. And my response to that was, that sounds great and good, but you're gonna really upset at least Pizza Station and
Citibank.
And Citibank, but Citibank not as much, their bank they can handle it. But
Right.
you know,
But,
the
you
local
know,
businesses.
And Dunkin'
Donuts,
Donuts.
100%.
People
The
do
dry
jump in,
cleaner,
jump in,
you're gonna cause a serious problem,
Oh,
because you
no, no, no,
can't,
they
you
would-
can't access that.
They'd be up in arms,
You
because
can't
then,
act- you can't-
because then what you do is you lose those transient
100%,
spaces.
you can't park there.
And either you take away the first row of commuter spaces that are behind
It'd
that.
be a bit of a
Oh,
nightmare, because
boy.
you'd have to park behind all the other businesses, walk across the streets to pick up, it would just be.
Or you lose the first row of the commuter parking that's right on the other side of that little entryway.
Jeremy, one benefit of waiting a year is years ago when the gazebo was relocated, there was actually a plan done when the first master plan was done for the downtown area to actually have a bridge crossing of the stream channel so that you could have
I remember the
a
bridge
connection to the playground here, you know, the basketball court, and people could walk over to the gazebo in the town.
Yeah.
So you had a nice loop, you know, system that,
I-
you know, so I mean, you know, it's something to think about, is because it could be a way to connect the downtown, you know, to the playground as well.
100%, I think that's important, listen, when I say if we're up to me, but, you know, there's a argument to be made that even the rec field should be moved somewhere. I'm not advocating that.
of people have
I mean, that's a big piece of green, you can make a beautiful park space out of that, and a meeting area, and a community gathering area, but I mean, there's so many,
I think there's so much you can do even leaving the rec field there. I mean, cause look, you know, somebody who's been in town 30 years.
rec field to the parking lot,
It's, you know, it's almost like a
There's so much-
historical, that rec field to me is almost historic at this
take
point.
Horace Greeley, put him in the middle of the rec field. Come on, Victoria.
It's true.
Open
Who
space.
could resist it, you know?
Anyway, that's, we don't have to reach that, where we're getting distracted, so,
You know,
alright.
there was just one other point just that came up over here a few minutes ago. So if the court did move down and this created an opportunity for green space there, that is another place where people could walk and put some benches in there, hang out.
Right, you put like a little pocket park right
Yeah,
here.
so it becomes,
And
it
then
makes
put the
it,
crossing through there.
yeah, so just to address your concern, because I think it is nice to find a spot that works, you know, a nook and little.
That's I think that's a great idea for us to look to see what we gain, what we lose in terms of spaces.
Right.
And what's a net loss, you stick in a little pocket park down here, push it as far as you can.
Right.
I really like the idea of a crossing right there.
Me too.
Yep.
Oh, well,
I
yeah,
like
yeah.
it too. And I gotta say, I don't personally see the necessary value of the adjacent nature of the basketball court and the playground. Like if they are this far apart versus touching,
I
I
don't
don't think it matters, you know?
Even on a noise
Okay,
level,
so how
it's nice
many
for them to
people
be
would
able to-
actually be affected
Yeah.
by that?
By what?
Uh,
By moving it down?
Moving it,
Zero.
by having
Moving
it
it down?
close or not having it
Zero.
close?
No.
How much of a
We're
difference
talking what,
does it
No, I
make?
think the reason it was done that way was to save parking.
Yeah, so if we can gain more some way or find out what our net loss is,
Right. I mean,
Three
remember, the other
spots.
thing that we had talked about was because you've now got that permanent path, you know, through here into the commuter lot that you can use, especially since town hall, most of the public's utilization of town hall is in the evening. When the parking overflows is really after
Yeah,
5
that's the
o'clock.
great- That's
When
critical
all of this
time.
parking's available.
Then all
Right.
this parking is available, and if you know, now that that walk has been made permanent.
Is it lit?
It's not lit yet, maybe there is one light, but it's certainly paved.
Isn't,
Right,
isn't
and
there
certainly
a-
lightable.
It could be it could be lit, I think there is one light there.
I think there
Right.
is.
But it could be enhanced a little bit and made so that it's, you know, attractive and safe to walk from, you know, town hall over
Right.
to the commuter lot, and then you've got, you know, whatever spaces, you know, 5, 6, 7 spaces you may
Right.
lose here, you can make up over here, if you're using them after 5 o'clock, which is when most of the time that they're needed.
That's right.
That's when the real crunch
I never have a problem with
Yeah.
parking
I-
at town hall during the day.
no, I also, I mean, I do like the idea of this sending people through, but
Yeah,
if
for
we,
sure.
but if we make a pocket park there, then you lose that, but
Right.
Well, you
No,
lose
but they
you
still
lose
don't.
the vehicular,
we lose vehicle, yeah.
You lose the vehicular,
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, you
You
can
gain
gain, oh, that I know.
Right.
yeah.
And the safety benefits of that too.
That's a good, I think that's a good
To do a
concept.
thoroughfare though, you would be losing several parking spaces, cause you'd have to get the separation distances for turning radius and everything else, so.
But
I
what-
mean, it would be a big impact in terms of parking.
But what Jonathan's
I'm not
saying, I
sure we
think
can
is
make
right, is that the, you know, who's
Having
using this
access,
parking
yeah.
and when are they using it?
Yeah,
You know,
having
because
access to
if it's
that for
evening,
evening
this
would
is
be
just
good,
as
yeah.
convenient as this is.
Right.
And if it's
When you make that
daytime,
town
this is kind of a
vehicles,
wacky place to park anyway, and you
Town
probably don't
vehicles
need
parked
it.
there.
Yeah.
Which is where, which is
Which
traditionally
will have
what
less.
it was.
Right.
You know, there was always that funky
But I
town
like-
trailer, what was that?
The certain.
The surf trailer,
I like the idea better
what?
that we're
Certain
discussing, if it's not too much
Is
of
there
a
any
loss.
emergency
Of
response
doing a
team?
Is that what that
Down
was?
here where
It was a
someone can
trailer,
sit.
just sitting in the corner over
Yeah.
your.
right, that was where
Push
the
this
cop
down.
helped you put in your car seats, was always there, right?
Oh.
You met him there and he would help you install the
Right.
baby seats.
That's what I'm saying, if you ever needed it for emergency, you could put a bus, a trailer, a something, if the town was doing something, we need a place to put a large vehicle.
You know, with, you know, our standards that we usually require, you know, I would recommend that we still look at restoration of the stream bank.
Oh,
and the
absolutely.
plantings.
Oh,
And then that ties into if we ended up with a pocket park or a walkway, it's just gonna improve the aesthetics, you know, considerably along there. And it's also an educational opportunity to.
And it's
you
a
know,
much
promote,
safer
you know,
way to
planting
get
of
people.
Plants that
Oh.
people could use on their property.
it would be like what we did at Gedney,
Yeah,
Pardon me just
yeah,
one
right.
second,
Yeah. cause that turned out pretty nice.
It's well used,
Yeah, it is.
got everybody off the road.
Yeah.
Almost. There's still,
There's still some
there's still
people that
some
insist on walking
diehards
down
that,
the
yes,
boulevard.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, I like that. I think this is an opportunity for them to achieve something a lot better than this or this, you know, to really get what they're looking for, which is
So Jeremy,
a
who
more
was doing-
unified-
We need to tweak it now.
Who was doing, I mean, who's at Eberlin
They're
and
the-
Eberlin, they're engineers, are they really?
They're the landscape designer that
Right.
did the site plan.
Do they do parks?
Yeah, that's
Oh,
their
okay.
specialty. I mean, that was one of the reasons
Landscape
why they
architects,
were selected.
Oh, I see that, too.
yeah.
Yeah, but maybe they specialize in, you know, drainage ditches.
Right.
Well, I'll go back to them, when I say them,
Uh,
tomorrow and see if we can get these,
Yeah, the other option would be, whether it might make sense, is to have them come to a meeting with the board, have them, you know, then you could maybe finalize things so that, cause I'm sure we wanna minimize their cost in terms of design. You know, but get something so that everybody could agree upon and then
how much of this could be
the board
done
can issue a
in-house?
permit.
I mean, the site work and planning, now that we have this basic design, do we have the capability, if you know the answer, if you don't, that's fine, to finish
Well, the
this
other
in-house?
thing, if you wanna shift the court down to see how that works, you really need to have them do it in terms of the parking space requirements.
You don't think Bob would have the
It's
skill set to
like-
figure
Bob
that
could
out?
do it, but with the workload, I'm not sure.
Bob would do
You
it
could
in
almost go out there.
mid-October.
Yeah,
And just spray paint it on the ground there?
yeah, you could. I mean, yes, the
It's
answer
either
is
or.
yes, it could be done like that.
Just a matter of time, right?
Yeah. And, you know, it's just a question of how detailed, cause if you're gonna, I mean, if this is gonna be constructed, I would assume it'll go out to bid. You know, so then you're gonna
Right,
probably
you
want
need real
engineer
drawings,
plans to
right.
do it.
Okay.
And, but I think we're pretty close to,
Right.
you know,
Gives
I
the
think
town
it's
a lot
just,
of
I
options
think,
now
right,
to-
I think it's just a question now of
decide how you wanna do it.
what's best, you
Yeah.
know, I think they're all acceptable, or, you know, these things, it's just, how do we make it the
and
best
and
possible
logistics
project?
with, logistics with them using the staging areas.
So,
You know, I
possi-
don't see this starting until next year.
yeah, I think, you know, looking at all that, I think that's gonna be a real issue.
Well, like you say, it's a mess right now, so but that's to your advantage in some ways, because you get the opportunity to, you
Right.
know, to think it
To
through
think
and,
more,
yeah,
right,
get it right.
and come up with something that's really, you know, dynamite.
Or when these guys clean up the space, have them do the clearing, grubbing of the you know,
Yeah.
take all that crap
And I
out.
think that's part of the discussion,
They can-
was to have to do that.
So like, you have some like, you know, path like that, you know, in the green area here, you come back down, touch here, if you have a pocket
Where
park
did we
here.
leave off with the asphalt question?
Dog paws?
like the materials to
something
make
really
the
nice.
court.
And I'm
Well,
personally
there-
really
there
jazzed
are
about the idea of
alternative
this
types of
connecting into this,
surface
because
materials
this, you have the
that can be
string,
very
which is
costly
really exciting and beautiful
a lot of
and
maintenance.
provides
Instead
lots
of
of
you'd use
opportunities.
asphalt, then
You're
you'd have a
saying this for
runoff,
here, or
the
you're saying
thermo,
this-
what
Well,
do we
this-
call it,
this
the
is-
You usually
Hydrodynamic
what we recommend is,
Hydrodynamic
that's why we put it, it's
separator.
called a
Basketball court.
hydrodynamic.
Where you say the
separator.
bridge, the bridge would be.
Oh, I don't know,
Yeah,
I don't know
that's-
whether it's
that's a
here or
good
here,
treatment
you know,
measure
but
for-
to be
And it
able
really will
to
protect the water.
access
Yeah, they're very-
the rec
very
field
effective.
and this area and the gazebo and town, now you've created a, you know, you've got someplace to go.
You'll have an altar park of
That's
justice.
There you
I like it. Or the John Rosenblum Park of Chirping Birds. Should we continue? I think we should stop there.
No, we obviously would have to name it after,
Yes, that's very true.
our
Thank
our
you.
soon-to-be
I feel
departed
uncomfortable,
chair.
thank you for all your service, you've been around a heck of a lot longer than me, I mean, doing all this, thank you, how many years in total?
We've lived here for
Well, I mean, on the
47
board,
years.
how many years have you been on the board?
Since
1991.
1991, so 27 years.
That's terrific,
Yeah,
thank you.
that's scary.
Well, in '91, I was a sophomore, junior in high school. That's scary.
Jeez.
To help you move it forward, I mean, obviously, the board's not in a position to issue a permit yet.
No,
So
so,
I think, do you want me to talk to Jill and?
yeah, so tomorrow, maybe I can get it added to the agenda, and at least to briefly address it. You're not here in the evening, I assume, don't come for
Well,
this, are you?
I'm gonna be here tomorrow night for.
We're actually all gonna be here
We're all
tomorrow
gonna be
night.
here because of.
No, you are, that's right, but that's very true.
Oh, but we can't
You're
talk
not
business.
staying- But you're not
Otherwise,
staying.
it's an open meeting law violation.
But it'll be.
No, but everybody will be there.
Alright, well, I'll get it on the calendar, I'll get it added to the agenda, last year, add to the agenda, and you can speak to her tomorrow, and I'll speak to Bob also, and.
But I think, the sense I get is, I think we've got a good
I
plan.
think so.
You know, I think it's pretty close to being where you.
I think so too, at the same time, I can't speak on behalf of four other people, but I think that everyone's pretty
It
much.
looks like it's coming together.
You know, and it is much easier for the board to support because it's, you know, preserving natural areas and it's, you know, working within the mitigation concepts.
Right, because where the disturbance is gonna be
Is already.
is already disturbed area.
Right, and the trees coming down
that's-
are ornamental, like if you,
Right.
you know, they're
That's the
not-
beauty,
We
that's the
don't
beauty
care
of
if it's
doing it in
parking
the
or
parking lot.
basketball court, it's the same, you
Right,
know,
it's already
environmental
disturbed
impact.
buffer.
So, good. Thank you for waiting for me, I appreciate it. Sure.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you for your creative imagination on this.
Alright, thank you, I'm excited.
Stimulated a little thinking.
I'm excited, I'm excited. Now, I'm more
A real
thinking
iterative
themes and
process.
ideas and
There you go.
fun and-
This has almost been like a mini charrette.
What's a, I don't know, what's a charrette?
A charrette is when architects get together and throw spitballs and just thinking
Charrette
bullshit,
a
yeah.
term of art, or is it a actual word?
It's
Oh,
charrette,
it's-
it comes from, it's a French word meaning, what is it for? I used to know what it was,
Yeah.
but it's a term of art that architects use.
Um,
Sort of
Right.
like a brainstorming.
Sort of like
It's a
architectural
it's an architect's
brainstorming.
brainstorming session.
yeah.
Wow, I enjoyed shredding with you. Alright, thank you very much, I move to, I can't move to my.
We're not that formal.
That's the next on our agenda.
That's our last item and
Oh.
Yeah.
I was gonna pass it over to Bill, if you had any parting words for us?
I'll stay for that.
Oh,
Words of wisdom?
well, you're forcing me to come here tomorrow. I was gonna try.
It's never over.
Right,
I was
no-
trying to
29
sneak out
years.
of
So
town.
he only wanted to write one speech, so.
Yeah, but I think we've seen a lot of change in town. And we're very lucky to have people that can make that change occur in a positive direction. And I think the caliber of people that we get on some of the town boards, we could not afford. So we're really very lucky that people like these people right here volunteer their time and their expertise for the town. and sometimes we're even listened to. But I think we've had a positive impact in a lot of ways.
No, I think, you did, you have, you are.
Yeah. So you gotta keep the tradition going.
It's gonna be
So
tough
the
shoes.
burden is on you now.
It's gonna be tough shoes to fill, let me tell you.
Yeah,
But it was fun.
It was a good run.
So,
Still is fun. Even if we fight occasionally, it's still fun. And you can send me the emails.
I'll keep you on the list.
okay.
I'll look forward to your comments.
Well, we had an emeritus.
Yes, we did.
We had an emeritus chair for a long time,
Yes,
many
we
years,
did.
right?
I'd asked Joe, you know, whether we could do that, and she was checking to see, cause I didn't know whether the council had to weigh in on that. And
Weigh in on,
if we created Bill as emeritus, you know, because I guess there's issues of whether he's in.
But he wouldn't be voting,
Living in
presumably.
town, you know, or if he can be out of state resident, that kind of thing with that.
For a volunteer board? When he's not getting
Advisory.
paid?
I can't certainly
No, we're not
talk out of
advisory.
school and,
Well,
who's gonna rat him out and report it and say, you know, to the,
Exactly.
to whom? To the US Attorney's office, to the
Is that
DA's,
council
like,
board?
our board has had a history of working by consensus.
Yeah.
So that would not change.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We would
The more information, the better.
continue in the established tradition.
And especially, you know, these days of enhanced communication,
Exactly, I'm
you know, we
picturing,
could Skype with you every
picturing,
month.
you know, a
Put a screen-
disembodied
right,
Bill
put a screen
right
up.
here, yeah.
I'm gonna have to divide myself into a number of parts.
Right.
You know, Scout Troop wants me to do this, Clearwater wants me to do this, American Chemical Society wants me to do this.
So much for,
Busier
so
than
much-
How many pieces do I
Sandy,
have?
Sandy wants
She
you to do
wants
this?
a hunk of me too.
Well,
But yeah.
I'm gonna be rude and go because my wife and my 3 kids are probably going to be, I won't be here
Kids are still
tomorrow.
up?
Yeah, I have a 12-year-old, 10-year-old, 5-year-old, and they're all, you know, they're off the wall sometimes, so I'm gonna run.
Thanks for coming
I'll
in.
Good
see you
night's
tomorrow.
sleep.
I'll see you tomorrow. I gotta schlep into the city. What training you want tomorrow?
In the morning?
Yeah, 8:10, 8:12, alright.
thanks for coming, Jimmy.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you,
Thanks for your
thank you.
efforts.
Thank you.
All right.
Oh, I'll shake hands. Thank you. Thank you, thank you.
We've been doing a lot of that.
See you later, Jeremy. Alright,
If they say anything bad about me, tell them.
it's on tape.
Now he's talking now.
That's right, it's on
That's
tape
right,
now.
well, we're watching.
Okay, so we did everything.
We did everything.
I'm
So the
impressed.
only item left is whether anybody has anything else they wanna bring up, otherwise, I recommend we adjourn.
Okay, I think we did good.
Yep.
Yeah,
So,
second.
thank you.
Keep it up.
Good. All in favor?
Aye.
Alright.